All right, good afternoon and welcome to the Subcommittee on Public Safety, Transportation and Environment. We're hearing 3 budgets today, and at the request of Secretary Scruggs, we're going to take the DPSCS Division of Pretrial and Detention and Services first, and then we're going to go with the Office of Public Defender and then the Department of State Police in that order. To start with DPSCS, we have our analyst, Jacob Cash. Jacob, take it away.
Thank you, Madam Chair. For the Division of Pretrial Detention and Services, the overall fiscal 2024 budget is $285 million, which is about a $10 million increase over the 2023 working appropriation. Beginning with the performance evaluation, Exhibit 1 shows the number of arrestees that were processed at central booking and the number that were committed to pretrial detention. The arrestees continue to decline, and there was a 10% decline in 2022. And in the commitments processed, there was actually a slight increase of 1%, which is the first time we've seen that. And that did lead to an increase in the rate of commitment. This continues the trends that we've been seeing of fewer people coming in, but those that are coming in having more acute cases. Exhibit 2 shows the average daily population of the facilities in Baltimore City. Maybe I should step back and say that this division is the operating of the local jail facilities in Baltimore City. These are all co-located at the same Baltimore City pretrial complex. And they include primarily detainees, but they do include federal detainees within the Chesapeake Detention Facility, as well as short sentenced offenders from Baltimore City as a part of taking over those local jail responsibilities. The population slightly declined in 2022, and most of that came from the sentenced population. Exhibit 3 describes one of the more important performance measures for the department, and that is assaults in facilities. Exhibit 3 specifically shows offender-on-offender assaults because these are the most elevated and the highest rates in the department. You can see based on this graph that the BC-BIC, the central booking, has the most assaults, and those doubled in fiscal 2022. There's also elevated levels in some other facilities, but BC-BIC is by far the highest of concern. The offender-on-staff assaults also increased for BC-BIC from 45 to 88 in 2022. And this is a concern that we're reaching and surpassing the peaks that we saw in 2017. And in BC-BIC, it's far past the point that it was at that previous peak. We are asking, excuse me, I believe this is addressed in the department's testimony, but it's certainly a big concern of DLS. Moving to the pretrial release service program, also as a part of taking over the local jail responsibilities for Baltimore, this includes those who are assigned to pretrial supervision upon their release prior to their trial. You can see that the trends are also declining for this program, and that's commensurate with the overall population decrease. Exhibit 5 shows the performance measures for the PRSP program, specifically those that have been arrested on new charges or failed to appear. And PRSP has, for the past decade, reached its goal and surpassed it. There was a slight worsening of that rate in 2022, but that was expected, at least for the failure to appear rates due to the reopening of court processing during COVID. Moving to the budget, I would point out for fiscal 2022, their overtime spending was higher than what was budgeted by about $4.6 million, and they are increasing both in the working appropriation and in the allowance. For this division of pretrial detention and services specifically, their working appropriation is lower than the allowance, and it's lower than the actuals, and it's likely that excess salary savings generated from vacancies would need to be diverted to this purpose. There's a relationship between high vacancies and high overtime, and that has been a continued concern of DLS with the department's budget as well as overall operations. So we are asking them to identify the amount of excess salary savings that were generated in 2022, as well as the amount being generated so far in 2023. Exhibit 6 shows the overview of the agency spending, and similarly to the Division of Corrections, Division of Pretrial Detention and Services is a heavily personnel-based division with a large chunk going towards inmate medical costs. The budget change is $9.8 million, and the changes are listed in the Where It Goes chart on Exhibit 7. Overtime is the largest single increase at $7.1 million. This is the largest change in, or the largest overtime change in the department is for this division. And I'll be going into a little bit more of how overtime is changing in just a moment. But to point out some few other changes, that would be $1.7 million increasing because of fiscal 23 salary enhancements, as well as $1.5 million increasing for critical maintenance. I'll also note that in the chart, it notes that substance use disorder treatment services are declining, but the appropriation in 23 and 24 are both higher than the actuals and are related to a recently made contract with GEO reentry services for the department, and they're providing it as well in collaboration with West Care Foundation across all state facilities. There's startup costs associated with a particular part of that contract, which is the medication assisted treatment pilot program. And those startup costs are causing that reduction in the budget. Moving to the personnel data section, the budgeted turnover is at 13.7% and the actual turnover is 14.7%. So they are above turnover, but there's less of a gap in this division compared to some of the other parts of the department. Specifically moving to vacancies, Exhibit 8 breaks down the largest vacancies by classification. And particularly, I would point out maintenance staff are 55% vacant, and increasing critical maintenance funding, it would be important for them to fill these positions to not only expend that money and carry out those projects, but to improve the overall condition of the department's facilities, which are rapidly dilapidating. Similarly to other parts of the department, psychologists, counselors, and social workers are also nearly half vacant, as well as high vacancies among most of the other support services. While correctional officers do not have as high of a vacancy rate, they do account for the majority of the actual number of vacancies, because it does make up the largest portion of this personnel complement. Moving to the first issue for today, this would be overtime hours worked and the overtime spending for the department. This has been on the increase and it's been a large concern. Overtime for the department has exceeded $160 million in the allowance, and there's no signs of stopping. Exhibit 9 shows the number of hours that have been worked for overtime for CO 1 and 2, which are the primary users of overtime for the department. Most other positions are not authorized to work overtime. However, these are necessary to maintain operations of facilities 24/7. Since the end of COVID, really, we have been seeing a steady increase in the overtime hours worked per pay period. And breaking that down in Exhibit 10, that translates to about 20 hours of overtime per week for those working at 4 of the 6 pretrial detention facilities in Baltimore. Particularly, it's the worst at BC BIC, and I will note that this is also the facility that had the highest number of assaults, as well as the largest volume of offenders coming in and out. Related to this issue, DLS is recommending that budget bill language be adopted to require a report on overtime hours and assaults. This would restrict $300,000 pending the report, and it would include a breakdown of the hours worked and expenses by facility going back to 2015, an analysis of the assaults and the information available to the department to determine if there's any pattern in the assaults that they could determine based on overtime use or any other factors available to them, as well as the actions they're taking to reduce overtime specifically and the projected impacts of those actions, as well as an update on the investigation into pay errors for overtime, which led to a required lump sum of $30 million to be paid for that purpose in the previous year. And it's an ongoing situation that may require more state resources. Moving to the second issue today, this would be the compliance with the Duval v. Hogan settlement agreement. To remind the subcommittee, this is a long-standing settlement agreement based on a class action lawsuit filed by the ACLU on behalf of Baltimore City detainees. In 2015, this was reopened and the settlement agreement provisions were updated. They're listed all below, and because of the demolition or the closure of the Baltimore City Detention Center and the subsequent demolition, the physical plant condition provisions have been met with substantial compliance by the department. In terms of the medical and mental health provisions, there's still a lot of work to be done, and there is fluctuations in those compliance levels. Exhibit 11 displays the number of compliance provisions that have been upgraded, and particularly there were some improvements in ADA compliance and mental health compliance. Exhibit 12 shows the level, or it shows the number of provisions that were downgraded since we last checked. This does show that there was one more provision that was downgraded than was upgraded. And there is also some fluctuation in between these two timeframes for compliance levels as indicated by the department. Partially, some of these have been downgraded because a procurement for the electronic patient health record has been canceled, or excuse me, the work that was being done on it has been canceled, and that project is being reprocured. So that put the department behind on reaching compliance with some of those related to medical records. Overall, this is a concern though, and there are some delays in the planned improvements. So I already mentioned the electronic patient health record has been delayed. That would at least cause a 3-year delay in that project. There is also the Therapeutic Treatment Center, which is a capital project being considered by the state. This would be a 2-phase facility construction, which includes approximately 1,400 beds and would represent the largest investment into a state-owned facility that Maryland has ever made. This project is at least 8 years from completion, but it likely would be even more since it is a very large project. And so there's concern that if the department is waiting for that facility to be built, we would be waiting for 10 more years for compliance to be reached in these areas. We understand that this is very important for the development of the state and for the department's plans, and we are in support of the TTC, but these delays mean that reaching compliance on Duval will stay in the future. We're asking here that DPSCS comment on the actions they've taken to reach compliance and the results of the legal consultants that they hired in fiscal 2023. And we're also asking them to comment on actions necessary to ensure staff follow the standards of compliance, especially where those areas have been downgraded. Regarding recommended actions for this budget, there's only one, and that would be the $300,000 restriction related to receiving a report on overtime and assaults. If there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer them, but there are a few helpful appendices at the bottom, including an appendix showing all of the compliance provisions for Duval v. Hogan. But if there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. I appreciate the time.
Thank you, Jacob. Questions, Senator Roosevelt?
Thank you. One is this, because I really don't know much about this. Page 5, it looks like a material number of folks in the facility are federal detainees. I get the words, but I don't quite understand the mechanics. Do you understand? How does that, who's arresting who, and how does it relate to being held, and kind of how is that handled? Do you know, or should we ask the department?
So yeah, I could answer that.
Thank you.
It's so that there is a memorandum of understanding with the U.S. Marshal Service. So this facility previously was a Supermax facility, and then when that was no longer needed from the state, they entered into this agreement to use it for the U.S. Marshal Service. When they arrest people for federal crimes anywhere across this region, really it can extend even past Maryland, but this is a regional facility where they hold those detainees before they're before their trial occurs. It's been an ongoing concern with DLS because the state is losing out money on that deal now. Although when we first came into contract with them, they provided $20 million in a lump sum to help construction of the Dorsey Run facility.
Yeah, that was going to be my next question. We get money for these?
We receive a reimbursement that's been predetermined. They have gone back to the table a few times at the request of the budget committees to try to increase that reimbursement. They have been partially successful, although it has not reached the point of reaching the expenses. Most of that is because salary enhancements and other necessary maintenance projects have ballooned that budget past the reimbursement.
Can you get us a little summary of the numbers, how much we're paying for them and how much we're not getting for them? That'd be great. Thank you. I think I had another question here. Yeah, question on page 12 on the vacancy rates. And here I remain befuddled by this turnover and necessary vacancies. So that percentage, 1370, is a lot higher than it has been for a bunch of other agencies. Do you have an idea what the theory behind setting it at 13.7 as opposed to 8.5 or 5.8 or?
For this department, it's mostly been a lack of an ability to fill them. So having the budget more at a idealistic level would mean they'd have a lot more wiggle room with that funding where we wouldn't think they would actually spend it.
But that is set by DBM, right?
Yeah.
So DBM is, when they put that number on it, they're making a prediction as to how unsuccessful the department's going to be in filling their vacancies. Is that the way I understand it?
Absolutely.
Okay, that answers that question. This one is for the department. That's it. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Senator. And I'd encourage you to, if you haven't already, have a conversation with Secretary Grady about the vacancy and turnover rates and all these things. I think she's going to take a different approach, but I know it's something you care deeply about. So, okay, before Secretary Scruggs comes up, I'll just mention there's been some flurry back here because we did not receive, I believe, 2 of the 3 agency testimonies for today. And I know all the subcommittee members do their homework and read those in advance when we have them. So I would just really encourage everybody listening at home and in this room to please get us your departmental testimony in advance. If you submit it to the House, that's great. You also have to submit it to the Senate. If there's challenges uploading the testimony, please, Deneen is our wonderful counsel and she will ensure that it's in the system and we all have it. But if we want to avoid obvious questions the subcommittee may have that's in your testimony, we need that testimony in advance for the record. So just wanted to let everybody know. And it's been an issue across this budget season. So no one's guilty here, but we're all a new administration and a new subcommittee and next year will be better. Okay, with that, Secretary Scruggs and whoever you'd like from your team.
Okay. Good afternoon, Chair Alford, committee members. Again, thank you, Mr. Cash, for that thorough overview. I have with me today, well, I am Carolyn J. Scruggs, the Secretary for the Maryland Department of Public Safety and Correctional Services. With me today is Annie Harvey. She is the Acting Deputy Secretary for Operations. Christina Lentz, who is the Acting Deputy Secretary for Administration, Dion Randolph, who's the Commissioner for the Division of Pretrial Detention and Services, and Angelina Granero, she is our Director for Data Analysis. The analysis contains 2 issues for us to comment on and 1 recommended action. First, the department was asked to identify the overall amount of vacancy savings in fiscal 2022 that were used to fund other purposes and the amount of excess vacancy savings generated so far in fiscal 2023. This fiscal year 2022, the fiscal year 2022 vacancy savings were 24.6 million for all funds, of which the general fund vacancy savings was 10.8 million. Though it is difficult to identify the specific deficits the vacancy savings covered due to a complex accounting structure, the expenditure categories that had the largest deficits were food, utilities, and telecommunications. A breakdown of these savings is provided in my written testimony. At this time, it is too soon to identify any fiscal year 2023 savings, given there are 8 remaining pay periods for this fiscal year, and the department has not received information related to its share of the pending FY 2023 statewide budget amendment. I can inform you that the department continues to experience vacancy rates between 11% and 16% in each facility, despite significant efforts to fill those vacancies. To help address vacancy rates in the department, we have increased entry-level salaries. Specifically for the Division of Pretrial Detention and Services, hard-to-fill positions include correctional dietary officers, correctional supply officers, as well as maintenance officers. The entry-level salaries for these positions were increased in fiscal year 2022 in an effort to be more competitive with recruitment. 2 other hard-to-fill positions included pretrial release investigators and commitment specialists, and these entry-level salaries were also increased. During the last quarter of 2022, the department more than doubled its administrative and correctional hiring compared to prior quarters. As I stated in previous hearings, the department continues with efforts to recruit and retain our staff, and these efforts will reduce vacancy savings in the future. The second issue the department was asked to comment on is the Duval versus Hogan settlement. The litigation was initiated in the 1960s, prior to the state assuming control of the Baltimore pretrial facilities, and it has been in existence through numerous decades. Since that time, the department has demolished the building originally impacted by this population, and that's the old BCDC. However, as the pretrial population has expanded, other facilities were included. I'm incredibly proud of everything Commissioner Randolph and her team are doing to come into compliance with the settlement. The department has fully satisfied 16 of the 26 original conditions of the agreement. We continue to work with the court monitors and its healthcare providers to come into compliance with the remaining provisions. There are 2 key areas the department is working to improve in order to reach full compliance: implementation of the electronic health record system and modification of space to improve clinical care. Currently, the department utilizes a hybrid electronic and paper medical record system. Both the medical and mental health monitors are of the opinion that the department cannot be in full compliance with the settlement agreement until the electronic health medical record system is enacted. As I shared in previous testimony, the department is actively working with the next gen to enhance the legacy application to meet the legal requirements as set forth by Duval versus Hogan's consent decree. And we have a timeline of fiscal year 2024. The department also continues to plan for the new therapeutic treatment center, which will have adequate space for treatment and incarcerated individuals. I will share with you that while, as Mr. Cash says, it will take several years for that to be implemented, we are constantly meeting with our partners at Baltimore Police Department to determine ways that we can start to implement some of those services prior to the development and the completion of that center. Regarding the recommendations, the department concurs with the recommended actions, but must note that the breakdown of correctional officer overtime hours worked and expenses paid per facility per pay period from July 2015 to July 2023 is not possible. The department did not begin to track this data until October 25th, 2016, when we were converted to Workday. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. Senator Salling.
Thank you, and thank you for the information, Madam Secretary. I just want to talk about 2 of the key observations that were discussed. Some of our safety concerns that we do have: the assaults, 43 per 100 average, 1 homicide, I know safety is the top concern in anything and everything that we do. And I just see that, you know, these things have happened. What are we trying to do to improve in that area?
So I want to answer that twofold for you. First, that we know that our assaults have gone up, but we also recognize that we had paused for a while because of COVID. So we had less movement, less human interaction amongst each other. And I have with me Ms. Angelina Granero, who's our Director of Data, who actually does the assessment on that. I would like for her to explain that assault to you, the assault statistics, because I think it's a little different than how Mr. Cash shared it, if that's okay.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. Thank you for that question, Senator. I think what's first important to understand, as the Secretary mentioned, is that there are a number of more nuanced measures that we maintain internally on our population that are not entirely reflected in something the high level measures such as just our ADP, that 43 per 100 rate that you cited. And thank you for using the normalized rate. I think it is the most accurate way to compare easily between years. In addition to the movement contributing to that, we also have individuals who are in a very different situation now than we were in 2017. Although courts have resumed operations, there is still an impact on the average length of stay for individuals within pretrial custody, upwards of 140 days compared to the pre-COVID period. And while it's down from the peak and individuals are having those cases moving forward, it is a different situation for a lot of them. There's more time for interpersonal conflicts to kind of build up and arise. There's a number of additional metrics that we track internally specific to our staff and what they do to help contribute to the security within those facilities, namely the use of de-escalation techniques, the crisis intervention training that they've received, in order to keep some of those assaults from escalating and resulting in more serious injury. 92% of those instances did not require significant medical attention. They would be categorized as not more serious assaults, but they are still important. And that is why we report them all regardless of the impact. I do think as well, we can provide information in the report in October that takes into account both underlying offenses.
Well, I appreciate that. I just want to make sure more than anything that everybody's protected. I mean, we have the people that are there that been there for their reasons, but we have people that are protecting them literally and are doing their job. We want to make sure they're protected too. And that's right. The training is so important that they have the proper training so it doesn't escalate or doesn't get any more out of hand than that. And the one more thing is the overtime. And I know it's a problem. I know it's ongoing. Most of our departments are having a tough time. I talked to my delegate who's in appropriations, and he gave me a great idea. And I just want to say, I think the state of Maryland needs to have a job fair. If we could do one massive one, what help we would get, because I see every department is so short. We talk about our police departments. We're talking about every department. We're talking about your department, of course. And we need to really find a way where we can get some good qualified people, but people, the retention, of course, is so important too, keeping our people. And if there's something that we could do, I don't know, we're missing the mark, we're missing something, I don't know what it is, but I think working together is so important, being on the same page. But there's something more that we can do. This committee wants to help out in every way that we can, because the overtime I know is overwhelming.
It is.
And our people that are working 7 days a week, doubles, that's not safe. And you know that, and I know that. I've done that before when I was young. I couldn't do that now. So just saying, if we could find another way, if there's something else more we can do. Again, we talk to our veterans when we want to see them to get great jobs and have opportunities. We want to see them get good pay, by the way, too.
Correct.
But we want to find ways where we can help this out. And I thank you so much.
Thank you
Appreciate
very
that.
much.
Thank you.
Senator Roosevelt.
Thank you. On the vacancy issue, you talked about the pay raises in the various categories. For those categories, can you tell us what the starting pay is now?
Do you have that? We don't have that with us. I will let you know that I think you're, in one of our previous sessions, you asked about the correctional dietary officer.
Yes,
And we did go back and look at that, and that was the requirement for a high school diploma. So many of them are low-paying grade levels. When I say low-paying, I mean around grade 8 and 9.
I don't know what that means in terms of
So,
dollars.
so those salaries are somewhere around 33,000 a year, maybe sometimes less, but we can get you the specific salary range for each. The advantage is that right now, a new person coming in, we do have some leeway to take them up a few additional steps instead of starting them at base,
Mhm.
just by some guidance that we were given from Department of Budget and Management. But we still are challenged with competing with private industry that's going to start higher.
Sure.
Colleges and universities that have the same types of needs, dietary supply, that start higher.
Sure.
And just knowing that the environment that person is coming into is going to be quite different than if they go
For
into
sure,
it.
for sure.
So it is imperative that we look at those salaries and we make those determinations just because of not only the environment they're coming in, but a person being able to survive and have an income, that salary needs to be higher.
Right. I mean, that's why I'm interested in actually seeing the salaries
We
for
will-
those to try to
we'll make sure
understand.
you get
If we can,
that.
if you can get that for
We
us.
can get to the list of the ones that you mentioned with the appropriate
That would be-
salary. And I can say that on, at the minimum, they went up 15%. But
Great. But
Yeah,
did they
I
go
saw
up
that
enough? I mean,
the
that's
salary.
what I'm
Right.
sort of asking the question. The other question related to that was, and these went into effect when, these higher salaries?
throughout last year, correct? Yeah.
July 1 of last year.
And so do you see a pattern within the various occupations of material impact in terms of being able to hire people or not?
So what I will tell you is, we had a job fair this weekend. I was able to attend, and it's actually in Georgetown, Delaware, because we have our Eastern Shore Correctional
Mhm.
that's not far from there. We were able to fill every dietary vacancy we had at ECI. We did contractual offers of employment. There were 16 people hired. So yes, that was very, very, it was great for our department. We will continue, as the senator said, we're going to continue to do those job fairs. We're happy to come into your communities and have job fairs. We have several councilmen and others that have reached out to us, and we are going to do specific community type job fairs. We're going to aggressively go out and do that and let individuals know that we are more than corrections. There are other opportunities here for us. So just from the success we had this weekend, I know that we can be successful if we continue to do these types of job fairs.
And Secretary, I was able to pull the response. It starts at like 50, depending on the specific position, but it's around 50,500. But we'll get you the specific.
Yeah,
But
just
for
just
reference.
by occupation.
That would be for a correctional dietary officer training.
Well,
That's a
just-
training.
But there were others. You have maintenance issues, you have case management, you've got a whole variety of high vacancy rates.
And be mindful, those maintenance vary because they are specific to refrigeration.
Sure.
HVAC, electronic, so.
I understand. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Before Senator Jackson, I just want to continue on Senator Rosepep's, because we had DBM personnel in front of us earlier this week. It's been a long week. Talking about some of the consistent themes we've seen, especially in this subcommittee. I think we just happen to have departments with the highest vacancy rates across government in this subcommittee. Lucky us. But there's been themes across the board. Time of onboarding is certainly a theme we've heard. Salary schedule and has been, for those who don't have the ability to set their own, has been a theme. You have the ability to set your own salary within
Within a range.
your range. Okay. That's helpful for us. But if you have other thoughts for us, because you are such a large, corrections as a whole, as a large department, when it comes to onboarding, we talk with the secretary about if we have, persistent vacancy rates or a vacancy that's been vacant for 3 months or more, can we streamline the onboarding process? So if you and your team, I think this might be the last time you're in front of us, if you could think about that over the weekend and get back to us about if you see consistent themes across corrections in terms of reducing your vacancy rate, this subcommittee would be very happy to hear that.
Yes, certainly.
Thank you. Senator Jackson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The salary schedule was going to be one of my questions. I'm glad to know that you guys have a partial or within a range, you have the ability to do that. Just a couple of questions. Most have been asked already. I'm looking at the exhibit 10, and it talks about it addresses the overtime throughout DPDS. And could you speak to the overtime rate in BC-BIC versus the others?
So I think one of the things that we need to recognize with BC-BIC is that it's very unique. It has a very transient population, and it is a specialty. The operations went in there require you to have log-ons for certain types of access to our offender case management system and knowledge of processing. It's a little more than corrections. So we only have a certain pool of individuals. We continue to train, but we have a certain pool of individuals that know how to do arrest booking and processing, that are certified in fingerprinting because they have to fingerprint, that understand how to process a commitment or understand how to process a release from the court commissioner. So there are specialty training areas in that booking area that require us sometimes to have the same individuals working and doing overtime. One of the things that I did ask the commissioner to do, and I know she's been looking at, is how we broaden that to give other people opportunity, especially as we bring new individuals in. So a lot, you will see it is driven a lot by the need to have those specialty correctional officers in those different places to work because others don't have the certification. And if we put the others there, it's going to delay processes. And we are under a 24-hour mandate to process any arrestee that comes in there.
Understand the regional processing concept and the concept there. So that leads to the second part of my question is your ability to get them trained. So I know that the correlation sometimes between your in-service training and your overtime numbers, particularly when you're short in staffing, is a challenge. So maybe, well, first of all, keep us in the loop on how you're going to train more people, not necessarily assigned to BC-BIC, to gain those skills, because that'll be valuable for you across the board. It helps cross-train your employees, as you're well aware. But those take time. So make sure you keep us in line with that. But the correlation between your in-service training and your overtime hours, how big of a challenge is that? I know some agencies in public safety, folks take off a week, not necessarily take off a week, but you go to training for a week and you have to backfill the position. So I understand, Department of Corrections is very unique in itself. It has various entities within. So if that's a continuing problem for you, with relationship to overtime and in-service training, I would certainly like to see a plan going forward with that as well. So
okay. We do try to project that as part of our entitlements, knowing that when we have that group of individuals that is going to be out for a week, and most of the time it is backfilled with overtime. Because it impacts the operation. So it significantly impacts that week a year does significantly impact our overtime.
absolutely. And so again, if we could couple the two, right? So your cross-training of individuals to be able to help with your backfill. And as we work together to try to help you get the manpower that you need. So we'd love to see a plan on your cross-training of individuals. So
We will do that.
thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Just one more question, and I don't know this. What's the difference between the CO1 and the CO2 experience?
The CO1 is the individual that's coming in the door. It's an automatic promotion to a CO2. And Christine, is it after 1 year or 2? 1 year. After 1 year, they
So
automatically get
that's more,
promoted.
okay.
Yeah.
That's all right. Thank you.
Thank you. Back to the list of occupations where you got the shortage areas. Could you also send to us with the entry pay levels, the education and certification requirements for those?
Yes,
That'd be
we'll
great.
send the entire spec to you.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
All right, Madam Secretary, I think the last time I have to ask you this question, but where would you like your vacancy rate to be this time next year when we meet?
And I am still where I told you, I
Okay.
am shooting for less than 10%.
Less than 10, okay?
And we are going to do everything we can in our power to get there.
Okay, we appreciate that.
And I'm going to take you up on that, sir.
Wonderful. All All right, see no other questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, and thank you for allowing us to go first.
Of
I
course.
do have being sworn in
Yes.
today, so thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Okay, next we have Office of Public Defender and we have Jacob Polakov. Jacob, when you are ready. Doing this. I know, I apologize, Denise. Sorry, I got really excited about Public Defender. Before we have Public Defender, we have two, I keep doing this, two individuals signed up to testify. We have Laquan Alston and Jason Billingsley. And just a reminder to our guests, we appreciate you being here. You have about 2.5 minutes, and we always appreciate written testimony as well. So we have it on the record. Please.
Hello, how you doing? My name is Laquan Alston. I'm a ASME shop steward for Local 3661. I work in central booking as a pretrial investigator. As a pretrial investigator, I'm one of 30 investigators, and we are the only pretrial unit, state-ran pretrial unit in the state of Maryland. We are the first contact for detainees when they are arrested. We investigate and run detainee criminal records, parole and probation logs, and FBI criminal history. So we provide that information to court commissioners for their bail review hearings, and we also provide the information to judges for the trial hearing. We also conduct initial interviews to verify a detainee's mental state, their physical health, drug use, their employment, and they're just basically they're just their demographics. Being an investigator is a very tedious and exact job. If we go and miss anything, we run into a possibility of a commissioner wrongly charging someone, getting them mixed up with someone else, releasing someone who's a repeat offender, releasing someone who has warrants, and many other things of that nature. So it's very exact, and we have to be on point, and we have to make sure, and we also run their juvenile record to make sure they might have a clean adult record and they might get charged, and we don't know what they did as a juvenile. So we also do that. So I have been a pretrial investigator for over a year now. And in my facility, I'm considered now a senior staff. Like, I'm the most senior staff in my facility right now. We're only 1.5 years in on my shift. When I started working for pretrial investigation, the starting pay was $29,000. And that had a major impact on retaining employees and my fellow coworkers. I had some people, you know, they loved the job, but they just had to leave. The state show initiative to hire new people, but with them hiring people, they didn't raise the pay. So eventually we have people that retired, or not retired, but resigned or switched over to a different agency. Most of them went federal, so we didn't even lose them to another state agency. We lost them to a federal agency. And with the help of my fellow shop stewards and the leadership committee, we're able to talk to management and get the base pay raised to $40,000. But that still puts us under the state minimum average of like $69,000. Retention is a major factor in pretrial because less of us means more crowded facilities. It means slower court processes. We are a 24-hour facility, so if it's only 3 people on a shift, I have to work overtime now. I just did my 8 hours, so now I have to work 16 hours working on a computer, making sure I don't miss any warrants. I don't miss any charges. I don't get the person mixed up with someone with the same name as them but a different birthday. And it's just retention. We just need more people. And to get more people, we need them to stay for a reason. So the budget and just hiring more is what we need.
Mr. Olson, thank you for being here. We appreciate your input. And I believe Senator Rosebeth has a question for you.
Question, how long have you worked there?
I've been there for a year and a half now.
And if I may ask, what were you doing before? Where were you working?
Before I was working for corrections.
Gotcha. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thanks for coming.
Thank you for being here.
Great, thank you.
And do we have a Mr. Billingsley in the room? Don't believe so. Okay. Denise, my apologies. And now we're ready for Office of Public Defender.
I will not. You get a first start?
Oh, yes.
The Office of the Public Defender provides counsel and related services to indigent persons through 12 district operations, 4 divisions, and 2 specialized units. Legal representation is provided in criminal trials, bail reviews, appeals, juvenile cases, post-conviction proceedings, parole and probation revocations, and involuntary commitments to mental institutions. The fiscal 2024 budget for the Office of the Public Defender increases by $9.2 million or 7% to $141.1 million, excuse me. There's a proposed deficiency appropriation to supplement the fiscal 2023 budget for the office by $926,938 in general funds for the purpose of funding accrued leave payouts. OPD has cited the number of retirees in fiscal 2023, along with the seniority of those retirees, as the reason for the deficiency. Moving down to Exhibit 1 in the middle of page 2, we'll see that approximately 80% of the office's budget for fiscal 24 is allocated for regular personnel and regular personnel salaries. Case-related expenses, including panel attorneys, comprise an additional 10% of the fiscal 24 allowance. As shown in Exhibit 2, seen on page 3, the fiscal 24 allowance again increases by 9.2 million or about 7%. The majority of the increase is devoted to personnel spending. Primarily, there's funding for 27 new assistant public defenders, 9 secretaries, 4 social workers, and 3 paralegals. There's an increase to employee and retiree health insurance. There is funding for incremental salary increases and the annualization of the November 2022 4.5% cost of living adjustment. One other change in the fiscal 24 budget is that grant funding for the Juvenile Justice and Mental Health Collaboration Project decreases in this allowance by approximately $102,000. Funding through the grant had been provided by the U.S. Department of Justice since fiscal 2020 to support collaboration across systems to improve responses and outcomes for youth with mental illness or simultaneous mental illness and substance abuse who come into contact with the juvenile justice system. In fiscal 2023, OPD was able to award a little over $150,000 to an Eastern Shore mental health facility. In fiscal 24, the remaining $49,740 is being used for the same purpose and funds 1 social worker. However, fiscal 24 does reflect the conclusion of funding available through the award, and OPD should comment on whether the project was considered successful and whether it is expected to continue with the conclusion of federal resources. On page 5, we'll find personnel data, which discusses the fact that OPD is gaining 43 regular positions and 10.5 contractuals this year. We'll also see that there are currently, as of December 31st, 2022, 92.5 vacancies, which is 10.47% of OPD's personnel allowance and 37 above their anticipated turnover. Vacancies remaining exceptionally high brings us to Exhibit 3 on page 5, where we see that of the 92.5 vacancies, 62.5 are for assistant public defenders, with 10 supervisors and a number of other employee types included in those vacancies. The fiscal 24 allowance for OPD includes 43 new regular positions and 10.5 new contractuals, as previously mentioned. OPD's need for contractual positions has historically fluctuated based on workload demands, with the fiscal 23 budget having reduced the number of contractual full-time equivalent positions by 16 and a quarter, and 10 and a half of those being restored this year. The 43 new regular positions all have at least one matching vacancy as of December 31st, 2022. And we'll see in Exhibit 4 the number of existing vacancies and the number of new positions, the existing vacancies being in blue and the new positions being in yellow. So we see in these numbers, there are 27 new assistant public defenders, while there are currently three vacant APD positions in administration, 3 in leadership, 17 in district court operations, 5 in juvenile court, 2 in parental defense, and 22 in the circuit court. And then we see data for paralegals, social workers, and office secretaries in the exhibit. OPD should comment on their strategy for filling the existing vacancies, how the annual salary review will be applied, and a timeline for filling positions to reduce vacancies in line with budgeted turnover. Additionally, OPD should comment on why the new positions are needed and how they differ, if at all, from the existing vacant positions. Moving to our first key observation on page 8, we'll see that average attorney caseloads are currently exceeding the standard workload. The 2022 Joint Chairman's Report requested a report regarding OPD's staffing needs. OPD's report utilized workload standards, which are currently being used from 2005, as opposed to new standards, which were due to be released by the American Bar Association and others in 2022. However, owing to a delay in the release of the new standards, the previous standards are still being used. OPD's average attorney caseloads by division exceed the standard number of cases in 3 of the 4 divisions where a standard exists. The highest disparities, as seen in Exhibit 5, again on page 8, are in mental health, where attorneys average 963 active matters, which is 130 above the standard, and post-conviction, where there are 147 instead of the 70, which is the standard. So again, we'll see in the exhibit, the red dot signifies where the standard caseload is, and the bar signifies where we actually are. The fact that 3 case types exceed the standards set for OPD is a critical issue which needs to be addressed in order for the office to achieve its goal of providing superior legal representation to indigent defendants. As shown in Exhibit 6, which can be found on page 10, OPD estimates that they need to add 42 attorneys to bring their caseloads in line with standards, with 39 going to the circuit court and 3 to the district court. The fiscal 2024 allowance provides 27 attorney positions to partially address the staffing shortfall, but as the exhibit further reveals, distribution among the jurisdictions is not even, as some jurisdictions have filled positions beyond what is needed to meet caseload standards, while others fall short. OPD should comment on the extent to which existing staff could be redistributed based on the workload needs identified in each jurisdiction. The Department of Legislative Services recommends the adoption of committee narrative requesting a report on average caseloads within OPD and how caseloads compare to the new standards, which are expected to be released in calendar 2023 by the American Bar Association and others. The second key observation, starting on page 11, looks at attorney departures outpacing hiring in the last couple of years. OPD's staffing struggles have involved issues with both hiring and retention. In order to better understand the scope of the personnel problems with which OPD is contending, last year's Joint Chairman's Report requested a report on staffing in terms of hiring and separation. The report revealed that in fiscal 2018 through 2020, the office was able to hire more attorneys than were lost to retirements, transfers, and other departures. However, in fiscal 21 and 22, the office lost a combined 24 more attorneys than they were able to hire. Exhibit 7, again found on page 11, displays further data on hiring and separation numbers for OPD. So we see again that hiring outpaced loss in 2018 through 20, and that separations outpaced hiring in 21 and 22. The retirements of multiple senior attorneys in fiscal 22 also created more vacancies for higher level attorneys, which has caused OPD to need to adjust their hiring practices to fill these more senior roles, in addition to attorney roles where less experience is needed. This resulted in changes to the number of APDs hired at different classifications. In fiscal 22, 13 attorneys were hired as assistant public defender 3s, in contrast to the prior 4 fiscal years having seen a combined 20 attorneys hired at that level. Exhibit 8 illustrates the number of attorneys hired at different classification levels between fiscal 2018 to fiscal 2022, including the previously mentioned shift in APD 3 hiring. The Office of the Public Defender should comment on what further changes in hiring practices can be made to allow for hiring of attorneys to outpace departures. Additionally, OPD should comment on the difference between the number of applicants for APD positions and the number of applicants hired and how current hiring processes impact this difference. Lastly, we have our operating budget recommended action, of which there is one, which is to adopt the narrative requesting a report on the average caseloads for attorneys in all of OPD's tracked case types between fiscal 2019 to 2023, using the caseload standards that OPD expects to adopt in calendar 2023. And Madam Chair, that is all I have for you today, and I'm happy to take questions.
Thank you, Jacob. Questions for our analyst? Okay. With us, we have Ms. Natasha Dartig.
Dartig, correct. Thank
Okay,
you.
and your team, please.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the committee. I am Natasha Dartig, State Public Defender. Present to my right is my Deputy Public Defender, Keith Lottridge. Present to my left is OPD Chief Financial Officer, Kathleen Mattis. And present to her left is Terry Green, OPD Director of Social Work. I want to take the opportunity to first say thank you for the opportunity to be here today to discuss fiscal year 24 budget for the Office of the Public Defender and to respond to the Department of Legislative Services fiscal year 24 budget analysis. I must first thank our legislative budget analyst, Jacob Palikov, for his thorough and insightful analysis. I also must take a moment to thank DBM, who has worked in partnership with OPD senior management team to successfully put forth 43 new positions for fiscal year 24, which includes 27 attorneys. I must emphasize that this number only represents an initial phase to meeting our staffing needs. But again, I thank DBM for working with OPD to move us through these challenges. I must first state to the committee, Madam Chair, that OPD does have a request today. And my request is that you in fact approve the fiscal year 24 budget, but I ask that you do so with 2 additions. In fact, this is a new day for the legislature. You have the expanded authority to do so, and I'm asking you to exercise your authority and to supplement the fiscal year 24 budget by doing 2 things. First, by providing additional funding that would convert contractual employee positions, and that is our social workers, our paralegals, our secretaries, our various administrative officers, from contractual to permanent employees. And these are employees that I'm speaking of that have had dedicated service to the Office of the Public Defender for more than 2 years. The second part of my ask is that of equity. I am specifically asking that wherever that you deem appropriate in terms of making additional resources in regards to the criminal legal system, and I give you specific examples of an increase in the judiciary or increase in state prosecutors, that you also find additional resources to bring the Office of the Public Defender in parity and provide us with additional staff positions. Again, attorneys, paralegals, secretaries, and appropriate supporting staff for fiscal year 24, so that we are able to meet our workload standards under the current legal practice. And I dare say to you, and I say it boldly, that this is not a large ask. And why do I say that? I say it because OPD serves a critical function for the state. It is an essential function which no other agency in the state does or can perform. OPD stands side by individuals who are facing criminal charges in the courts every day and in other aspects in which they have the potential to lose their freedom. OPD represents the woman who's facing the loss of her child in Anne Arundel County. OPD represents the man who's charged with carjacking in Prince George's County. OPD represents the college student who was charged with vehicular homicide because he was drunk driving in Ocean City. And we do so through holistic representation. What does that mean? To be effective criminal defense attorneys, to provide the superior representation that we do, it requires us to look to the whole person. And a critical member of our team are our social workers, because essentially by the time they come to the Office of the Public Defender, I dare say that their lives have exploded. And we cannot simply take into consideration the crime that they has been charged with without taking into consideration the person that we stand next to. The needs of the Office of the Public Defender are clearly the needs of the individuals that we represent each day. The requirement that is constitutionally mandated upon the Office of the Public Defender. We represent individuals, and I emphasize in all 24 Maryland counties, and we have a total of 52 offices statewide. Our attorneys are subject matter experts who, in addition to their direct client work, collaborate with local partners, address systematic concerns, share our unique criminal defense perspectives, but also provide expertise to our stakeholders, and we connect our clients with appropriate community-based service providers. The OPD value to Maryland warrants significant investment beyond what has been provided in previous years. And I say to you, OPD currently is in crisis. Now, let me be clear as to the depth of my personal knowledge of this. Although I am the leader of the Office of the Public Defender, and I sit before you as the public defender for a few short months, I have served Maryland as a public defender for over 26 years. And again, I say to you, OPD is currently in crisis. The increase that is requested in the fiscal year 24 budget is in fact urgent. And I speak of this urgent need and address the comments as presented to us by our analyst. And I speak to those in three specific categories: recruitment, retention, and repercussion. As to recruitment, OPD is incorporating a multifaceted approach to filling our existing vacancies. As of Monday, February the 27th, OPD has 67 attorney vacancies. Our new recruiting director that was hired in October of 22 has restarted the pipeline that was essentially interrupted by COVID and the Great Resignation. However, what is truly needed is a competitive wage. If you were to refer to our JCR report of 2021, where we specifically brought the information forward, but in 2021, our grade 22, which is an APD 3, which is our attorneys who are in the circuit court handling the most serious cases, the murders, the rapes, the armed carjacking. In 2021, the mean salary was $89,893. Similarly, complex cases that are handled in the Attorney General are also at a grade 22. For that same fiscal year of 21, the Attorney General's mean salary was $100,889. Currently, our base rate for an entry-level attorney, and essentially for entry level for Office of the Public Defender, actually does mean that you have to have had trial experience. Our APD ones, those who work in the district court, is starting base salary is $72,340. People are leaving OPD but going to do the same type of public interest work. However, they're going to places where they are paid more money and have a lighter workload. In fiscal year 22, we lost 26.3% of our attorney workforce. Hiring practices, I would tell you, are not dispositive or reflective of OPD's vacancy rate. Our recruitment and our retention challenges directly correlate to salary and workload. I tell you that in fiscal year 22, we were able to make 109 attorney job offers. 21 were rejected or withdrawn because of the salary amount offer that was made. Our efforts had been further exacerbated by COVID and the Great Resignation. I would also say of 33 positions most recently lost, that they are the most seasoned assistant public defenders. The APD3s that I spoke of that handle the more serious cases, again, the murders, the robberies, the rapes. This is extremely problematic for OPD, as these, again, are the most serious cases. The new attorney positions that we have advocated for in fiscal year budget 24 represents our strategic plan. These new positions will allow us the creation of a higher grade. Essentially, the grade will be a senior APD3. The senior APD3 position expands the career pathing that currently does not exist, especially for those in non-managerial circuit court attorney positions. The 27 new attorney positions will allow OPD to promote from within, while also allowing us to fill vacancies with more entry-level attorney hires, and that generally is an easier area to recruit. In regards to our core staff, our paralegals, social workers, secretaries, intake workers, administrative staff, the efficiency and the effectiveness of our operations rests squarely on the quality of their work. There must be paid more. The base salary for an office clerk 1 at the Office of the Public Defender is $34,353. An office secretary 1, $38,043. A paralegal 1, $44,550. A social worker 1, $71,355. This is not acceptable. Similar to our attorneys, our senior leadership team is working to restructure our core staff organization and increase compensation to better reflect the expertise, the impact, and the immense value that these individuals bring to our defense team. To that end, that is why I am seeking you to exercise your expanded authority to provide additional funding to convert 20 contractual employee positions to permanent employee positions. That takes me to the issue of retention. Salaries are a challenge at OPD. However, that is not the only challenge that we face. It is an issue of workloads. OPD attorneys carry an excessive high volume of cases that require increasingly more time. And I tell you about, think about body cam. It required greater levels of legal expertise. Think about cell phone triangulation, more technical administrative support. We are in an age of electronic filing, electronic discovery, as well as additional expert services, coordination, for example, with DNA experts. The excessive workloads reverberate throughout issues of recruitment, retention, compensation, and most definitely morale. I say to you that the redistribution of employees is not a viable solution. Simply transferring current inefficiencies from one location to another only increases problems in the other. And I give you the example that I have employees in Hagerstown. I cannot simply move them from Hagerstown to Cecil County. However, even with those challenges, my HR department has been extremely adept at deployment of open staff positions to the various district operations as they are able to do so. The third issue I bring before you is that of repercussions. OPD's high workloads and non-competitive pay has further delayed our ability to address our relocation efforts. If you're a fan of Game of Thrones, I would tell you the reference that is most suiting for OPD is that winter is coming. And if you're not familiar with the series, it was essentially the foreboding and warning of things to come. For us at OPD, our winter is essentially the workload standards are coming. ABA, American Bar Association standards, will define what is the proper attorney caseload ratio. The report will undoubtedly reveal that the status quo is abhorrent and cannot and must not continue. OPD needs additional resources to face the challenge. We need additional resources to meet the day-to-day volume of work, to keep pace with the current changing legal environment around the state, to mirror resources and efforts allocated to other entities in the criminal legal space that directly impact public defense. We must better compensate our attorneys and core staff members for the work performed in order to recruit, retain, and provide the superior legal representation that we are required to do, but most importantly, that our clients deserve. We are open to your questions, and you will hear additional testimony regarding the immense value that OPD brings to the state of Maryland. But as the Maryland leader of the Office of the Public Defender, I say to you that I have an incredible team of talented, dedicated, and resilient public servants. I urge you to return a favorable report consisting of not only approval of the budget, but also the additions as I have requested. Equity, parity is important. OPD defends individuals. Individuals are what our families are made of. The families are the bedrock of our communities, and these communities are from the mountains to the shore and every town in between. The value of investment in the Office of the Public Defender is ensuring that justice, fairness, and dignity is in fact relayed to all people of Maryland. I thank you, and I'm open to questions.
Thank you, Ms. Dartig. We appreciate that. I've been looking through the testimony. Two quick questions on the budget request that you're asking of the subcommittee. I could not find that in your written testimony in terms of the numbers. Did I overlook it somewhere? And if not, could you get it to us in writing?
I will supplement.
Okay. Part of the challenge is we have a couple that are labeled Office of Public Defender, so it's hard to tell which one contains that. Okay. Could you get that to the subcommittee? And approximately, just for conversation purposes today, what is that number that you're requesting? And have you asked it of Governor Moore in a supplemental budget?
I will pass it on to my CFO.
Okay.
We're talking about the contractual conversions. There were 20 positions that would be approximately 2.1 million.
Okay.
And no, there has not been a formal request through the supplemental budget.
While we still don't have a supplemental budget, I would request of you to try that avenue to start with. And then hopefully you're successful. And then the subcommittee can take that up as soon as we have it in writing. Thank you. Senator Jackson.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation. And I take it from your presentation that one question we asked of everyone who comes before this budget committee is your ability, particularly with the new administration, your ability, obviously you don't have a salary schedule, your ability to set your own. So that's something we'll take into consideration as well as we move forward. Regarding your contractual, thank you for the number. I was going to ask the number as well. So 20, those conversions. Regarding your staff, other than your attorneys, to start there, what do you draw from a pool to bring them on?
Other than
Other than attorneys?
yes.
Yeah.
So are you asking in terms of advertising?
Yes.
So in terms of advertising, we, through various social media, the various publications, and that is open throughout the throughout the state.
Okay, do you employ or?
And I would
bring
also
on-
say surrounding areas, excuse me.
Okay.
Yes.
You bring on interns as well?
Oh, absolutely. We
Into
bring
your
on
agency.
students, we bring on students in the social work division. We bring on students, law students in terms of assisting the attorneys during the summers. We also bring on college students to a lesser degree. And I say that because of the nature of our work.
Okay, absolutely. So it's your secretarial pool,
I'm sorry?
your secretarial pool. So in the budget, you've been granted some additional secretary positions.
Yes.
So what is the vacancy rate in your secretarial pool? Is that due to retirees or is that due to salaries?
So our losses generally overall are due to salaries, especially when we speak about our core staff members. In regards to the actual vacancy number, we are not currently, that position, I don't believe is currently vacant.
You're being granted
Six
additional
positions.
secretary positions.
Well, I say to you, the need for additional secretaries, I give you the example, for example, you have a surgeon in the operating room, right? The attorney is essentially the surgeon in the operating room. For that surgeon to be able to perform their duties, they do need the nurse, you need the radiologist, essentially. So simply having 27 attorneys is essentially bare without the corresponding support. So essentially the 27 with the additional members, that is to supplement the team.
Understood. So 27 is not where you need to be though, right? So
It
you
is
have to
not. It is not.
Exactly. So the number of secretarial positions and others, are they equated to the 27 attorneys or they're equated to your entire vacancies?
It is equated to the 27 attorneys.
Okay, so then
Yes.
we would need to increase that. So we-
Absolutely. Yes, yes, yes.
All right. And Madam Chair, if I might. Obviously, as we have finally gotten to the point where we're recognizing something that's been right before us. I've been in public safety for a long time, the mental health issues that we have and we have to deal with at every level of our criminal justice system and throughout. So your social workers that you have on staff, how many of those, and you can give it to me later if you like, are they clinical social workers or are they? How many clinical social workers do you have on staff and how many do you believe you need on staff?
My director, Ms. Green, will answer.
So we currently have 27 permanent full-time social workers. All our social workers are licensed. The majority of them are LCSWCs.
Okay.
And there was a 2005 analysis of social workers, the ratio of attorneys to social workers at the Public Defender's Office. And in 2005, we had 25 full-time social workers. The ratio from that report stated the ratio should be 8-to-1. At that point, we would have had to have hired, we needed a total of 44 social workers in 2005. Today, a decade later, we still only have 27 full-time social workers.
And if I would just add to that, what further exacerbate and multiplies that is essentially in that time period, the practice of law has exponentially evolved, right? You think about in terms of technology and in terms of science, what we know, for example, in terms of mental health and all these various issues, how that directly impacts criminal defense. So the fact that we remain stagnant in terms of the number of social workers is quite deplorable.
I'm on the same page with you. We're just walking this along.
Thank you.
And I think this is, as you look, the bottom line is you'll find out that we're your partners. And our job is, we're a budget committee. And our job is to try to find out what you need. And so that it's understood by us and those who we have to go to. And at the same time, understanding that sometimes the budget you get is not the budget you need.
Mhm.
And sometimes, I like to look at everyone because it takes an entire team to get the mission done. So that's why I was talking more about those individuals more so than the attorneys, understanding Having worked my entire career with you all, you all do a terrific job. But I think we make sure that we can work with you on enhancing your the staff to make sure that your office goes. So thank you. Look forward to the documentation and any other piece of material that you have that may help us clarify our
Thank you.
requests on your behalf going forward. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. What's the average tenure of your lawyers and of your non-lawyers?
That I don't believe we have that specific information in front of us. It does vary.
We can get it to us.
We can get it to you. I will say that the average would suggest that we have an average lifespan. The truth is, based over the last few years, people come in and we have seen a dramatic increase in losses, as you can see.
Of short timers.
Of short timers and of our senior attorneys, because with COVID and everything that happened during COVID, we had a backlog in cases. We did not have enough attorneys to handle it. So we have two different areas where we're losing people. We were losing people at the beginning and we started losing a lot.
Okay, well, you can divide it into those.
Yeah, we can get that.
The average of short termers and long termers, however you want to do it. I'm just trying to get a sense of it.
And it does vary, but I can at least say, sitting before you at this table right here, you have about 70 years of service. So
Great.
Amongst the four of us.
Great, thank you. That was question number one. Question number two is, what percentage of your employees, obviously your lawyers require law degrees, but of your non-lawyers, what percentage require college degrees? Any idea?
That would be definitely an answer we would have to
That'd
give
be
back
great.
to you. Yeah.
That'd be fabulous. And the last question is big picture. I know you've got somebody new working on recruiting, but big picture, how do you recruit lawyers and how do you recruit non-lawyers?
So essentially, it's two different roads because our lawyers have to be licensed. And not only do you have to be licensed, public defense is a specialty. So we're looking for that special someone who can do this type of work, which is challenging work. But we recruit law students. We recruit through various professional associations. And these are associations throughout the country. So
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that. What
professional associations, but we also recruit throughout the country.
How?
So social media, various newspapers, all the means in which LinkedIn, there's various different professional.
We're talking about lawyers for a minute. On the
Yes.
recruitment you do for lawyers, are you generally getting an adequate number of applicants and then they're not interested once they hear the pay, or you're not getting enough applicants?
So essentially, those who apply for public defense is generally low when you make comparisons to other types of criminal work.
Sure.
Right, because of the nature of the work.
Yes.
And then you compound that public defense, the salary that is
Sure.
offered. So we never will compare to, like, for example, those seeking to enter private law firms or corporate.
Right.
That is just not the nature of the work that we do. And so, yeah.
I'd supplement that. Our number of applicants did drop by maybe 20% over the last 5 years. But the last couple of years, that's specifically been to COVID, which we all know about. The market has tightened up a lot, and quite simply, we are not competitive. I mean, you can go on Glassdoor and see what our starting salary is, and we have the federal public defender, PDS, the local jurisdictions around us all pay more than we do.
Right.
So our numbers dropped. The other thing is, if you look at the report, it shows we had 500 and so many applicants, and we only hired, I think, less than 100. So I think it was already mentioned that we actually made more than 100 offers, and more than 20% turned us down.
I remember that.
The other part of that is, of that 500, remember, quite a few of those people who were applying while they were in law school. And we can only hire so many people who are prospective attorneys, because it's an 18, if you're a 3L, meaning you're in law school and you're in your third year, you still have to graduate law school, take the bar exam, and then wait for your results to be sworn in. That's about an 18-month process from when we're interviewing you. So we can only really extend so many of those offers. So of the 500 people who applied, let's say 100 of those or 150 of those were law students who are 3Ls. we could only offer maybe 10
Well,
of
do you,
those.
do you have any career path where you can bring those people in before they become lawyers?
State of
No.
Maryland, no.
We are
because
required to be licensed.
You're required to be an attorney to be a public defender, and we don't have
No.
positions for non-attorneys. We just.
Well, that was my question.
Yeah.
Why not?
Well, we have our.
We
core
will,
staff.
we will definitely expand, but our current budget does not allow us to have, for example, paid law clerks would that what would be called. We don't have that in our current budget to be able to do that. But that would be a great career path. And
Well, what about paralegals?
we do have paralegals, but paralegals are essentially serve a different function than a law clerk and essentially a different function than the lawyer. But we do have paralegals, though not enough.
Well, let me just make a suggestion, as I've made, my colleagues will remember this from other hearings, to think about apprenticeship pathways. They do this in the United Kingdom, they do this in other countries. And they do it in law. And my grandfather, essentially, that's how he became a lawyer and then a judge, is basically, and we've made the system very bureaucratic, which is why we have the problem now. But you have jobs for which you don't need a law degree, and it's work that needs to be done. If you can restructure your positions, so you bring people in when they're motivated, when they're interested, get them in, pay them, get them on the job, get them to learn how the office works, learn what they're doing, and then they get their law degree and they're ready for prime time to try to avoid your 18-month problem.
So, well, two things. When we try to do that now with, like, when we bring in secretaries and other thing, we're trying to create a career track where we can have them advance into paralegal careers.
Yeah, that's great
That gives
too.
them more opportunity, and we can bring in people who don't necessarily have a law degree. But when you're talking about bringing in people who just graduate law schools as paralegals, our salary structure, it's not a competitive structure for our paralegals. If you just graduate law school, you're not going to pay your.
No, I'm saying if you haven't graduated, you don't need a law degree to be a paralegal.
No, and that's why we say, like, our secretaries and other things we bring into that. But the other thing is, right now, with the number of pins we have available, the number of positions we have available, we quite frankly, I mean, we don't have enough people to do our intake, much less the things you're talking about. So it is, yes, we'll definitely go down that track.
Let's discuss it offline, because
Yeah.
I think, I don't know the numbers, you know the numbers. I think you have a whole bunch of jobs that don't require law degrees.
Oh, absolutely.
And therefore, if you think about those jobs for people who are getting their law degree, want to get a law degree, but haven't gotten it yet, I think there's a strategic way to make some impact. Happy to talk to you offline. Thank you.
Definitely meet with you.
I would just add in terms of our recruitment, we do offer opportunities, especially with the local law schools. And when I say local, I'm also extending into Washington,
Sure.
DC, where we do externship. So we do have students that come to work with us and they're able to get credit. The difficulty.
Are they paid?
They get credit. So
They're
essentially.
not paid.
They're not paid. They're not paid. And that is the challenge that we have. And I would say that our number one priority has been and will continue to be to make sure that those who are with us are adequately paid. And first we need to pay the people that we have, and then we can try to expand and bring new people, create new jobs. So and we are creative in how we are building that pipeline. So we are always bringing students in terms of various aspects of the job, because it is an expansive team that is needed to do criminal defense work. But our emphasis and our focus, and unapologetically, is that we get our people paid.
Thank you.
Just going off of Senator Rosepup's theme here, and again, we've seen it across every department and agency before our subcommittee, is everybody's facing a vacancy crisis. And everybody, I think, can do a little more in terms of being creative with workforce pipelines, either within your agency or working with other departments such as Veterans Affairs or such as Juvenile, something. So I would just challenge everybody here to start thinking about that. If you need support from us to start thinking about that pipeline, I think it's an easy idea to figure out a way to get you pipelines for law clerks so you can create that seamless path. That makes a lot of sense as well. But let me get to a couple of my consistent questions. And I know this is the first and only time you're before us, but I've been asking every agency head, department head, secretary. Governor Moore has set a goal of having the vacancy rate across state government within a year. We appreciate that you've inherited a lot of the challenges. We're coming out of COVID. That's another set of challenges. What number would you like the subcommittee to hold you to when we meet again next year in terms of your vacancy rate?
I would I would say 8%.
Okay, we appreciate that. And similarly, asking other folks, and again, our Secretary of DBM is new, inherited a lot of the challenges in DBM. But if there are issues that you have in onboarding or challenges that you've seen, we would love to hear about that now or in the future. Because I imagine when you're trying to onboard an attorney for them to wait 3 months to actually get in the office while they have other job offers, that's a challenge. So if you have any feedback for us now or later on, we'd appreciate that.
Yes, I would just like to add a caveat to my 8%. My 8% is with the additional funding
With it.
request that is as being made, because that will facilitate my ability and my team's ability to get to that 8%.
Okay, we appreciate that. On the contractual conversion, can you help me understand how you landed at 2.1 million? Appreciating in other state positions where we're utilizing contractual workers, we're actually spending more money on those contractual workers than if they had been state employees. So how did you land at 2.1 million in new money to convert those 20 positions? Okay.
So those are all the contractual employees that we have that have been with us more than 2 years.
Okay.
About half of them are social workers, and frankly, I use the fiscal note structure for valuing what they would come in at what level and the prevailing wage rate that we would give them for converting from a contractual position.
But what are you currently spending on? What's the budget line?
Our budget in total, including all benefits, is a little over 2.5 million. But it's a very fluid. In fact, when you look at those static PIN numbers, those really don't tell the story, because we have an HR group that's extremely dynamic in terms of managing those positions. They aren't all FTEs.
Okay.
They're all over the state. They're in every area of law. You know what I mean? You can imagine. So it's an incredibly dynamic number. What's been tough for us is that what happens is you get then some of those positions embedded in your infrastructure, and that's where you start to hurt your contractual budget and your ability to bring these people on board without losing them.
Okay.
And we're at that place.
I'm not sure I've asked the question correctly, so let me re-ask it.
Sorry.
If you are currently contracting for these 20 positions and spending X number on the 20 positions, what is that X number? Because theoretically, 2.1 million would come out of that.
Sorry, we would advocate that we would keep the contractual budget intact so that we could continue to do what we do, which is deploy. I mean, one way to look at this is that our core staff has shrunk appreciably by hundreds of positions over the past decade. And so that's one reason why we have what for us is a relatively substantial contractual group of employees, but we would hope to keep them so that we could continue to deploy them where again, areas of law, caseloads, workloads.
And we appreciate the pressures. I just want to make sure we're all on the same page of
it would be an addition.
Additional.
Correct.
Okay, and we're keeping your contractual line item the same
Yes.
while creating 20 new positions that you're targeting
for which
conversion.
We don't have permanent pins already available to which we can promote those people.
Okay, we appreciate, if you could get that all to us in writing, we would appreciate that budget request. And again, highly suggest that you request that of the Secretary of DBM and the Governor to be included in a supplemental.
You know that our supplemental budget request was the 43 pins that we have. I mean, just to be clear.
Well, we have, the supplemental budget has not come out yet. So you're saying?
So we can put this into them again.
Yes.
Okay, we will do that immediately. We'll do it before dinner.
Okay. Those are all my questions. Seeing no others, we appreciate you being here and look forward to continuing our work together.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. And Senator, I'll definitely reach out regarding the program. I like the idea.
Thank you. Jacob is ensuring I do not forget the public this time. So we have 3 folks signed up to testify: Cheryl Red and Jose Teneza and Cassie O'Neill. So we have 3 seats. And remind folks, we appreciate you being here. We do have a lot of written testimony under this budget, which we greatly appreciate. It helps us make informed decisions. You have 2.5 minutes as soon as you sit down. And thank you for being here. It's 2.5 minutes.
Yeah. Thank you. Good afternoon, esteemed senators and subcommittee members. Whoever said, I'm sorry, my name is Jose Teneza. I'm an assistant public defender in District 1, Baltimore City. I'm also the attorney vice president for the Maryland Defenders Union, AFSCME Local 423. Whoever said throwing money at problems means you don't have an interesting problem clearly has never worked for a state agency. I could talk about how we got here, but the bottom line is that the Office of the Public Defender is in fact in a staff and resources crisis that prevents us from providing the constitutionally mandated standard of representation for our indigent and incarcerated clients. Esteemed senators, I'm going to piggyback on what Madam Public Defender was talking about, asking for your authority to supplement the proposed budget, which we are obviously very, very grateful for. But whatever stretching of budgets and resources that can be done, I can tell you OPD definitely needs it. Not just so we have the proper statistically sound ratio of attorney to core staff. So when I say core staff, that would be legal secretaries, paralegals, intake, office clerks, as the position was described. But we also want all of the OPD job class salaries to be comparable to other agencies and businesses. Whatever raises in salaries for both non-attorney and attorney positions can be done. I am imploring you to also do that as well, because that means we can competitively hire and retain employees across the board for the future. And our non-attorney core staff definitely needs a true living wage. Some of them for years have been working additional jobs, and I'm not talking just one job, but 2 jobs just to support their families. So if I could just put this in context very quickly, I am a district court public defender. Typically, we are in court 3, possibly 4 days a week because of this crisis. And we have anywhere from 10 or up to 22 clients each day that we are in court. So consider 1 case for 1 client. Usually what that takes is intake or core staff or our office clerks are generating a file. They are filing pre-trial motions for us and omnis for our representation. The attorneys need to interview the clients. We need to interview witnesses. If we had investigators, they would be able to find witnesses or possibly help with the defense. If we also had full-time social workers that could assist with mental health issues, hooking up our clients holistically with services. Yes, and just to piggyback also the technology, I average about 6-7 hours of body camera footage each client. So the bottom line is we don't have enough to accomplish all of that and represent our clients. The only solution for an unsustainable pace is a sustainable pace. You all can change that. We're hoping you'll help us. Thank you.
Okay, good afternoon. My name is Casey O'Neill. I'm a social worker at the Office of the Public Defender, and I'm a member of the executive board of AFSCME Local 423. That's the Maryland Defenders Union. I've been at the Office of the Public Defender for 4 years now, and I just want to describe my job as a social worker at OPD so that you guys kind of understand what goes into it and how badly we need more of us. One of my primary roles is to conduct in-depth psychosocial assessments for youth in Baltimore City, and that's to determine their underlying clinical needs and make recommendations for treatment. So these evaluations involve hours of interviews with the young people. I talk to their family members, their teachers, their medical providers, and then I review thousands of pages of records for every client. I look at their any relevant research, and then write detailed reports that can help assist the court in how best to help the client and reduce their risk of reoffending. So this process can take months for every single client, especially when it's a youth who's charged as an adult. And I will just say, like, one of the best parts of my job at the end of this process is seeing a young person succeed in their job or finish school, graduate, and do well for the first time after they finally receive the treatment that they need. And that's directly because they've finally been evaluated and we see these mental health issues that are coming up for the first time and trauma histories and things like that. So OPD really does serve the most vulnerable Marylanders, and all of them would benefit from having a social worker. But as you guys have seen, and we heard from the testimony from the agency, in 2022, the staffing needs report showed that we had 26 social workers for the entire state of Maryland. And we would really need to double that number just to meet the what was considered the standard of 8 attorneys per social worker. At many offices, including my own, we only have 1 social worker on staff to serve that population. So I'm in the Baltimore City Juvenile Office. I know some regions have 1 social worker serving an entire region, so multiple counties at a time. My colleagues and I routinely work in the evenings, on holidays, on the weekends, just to keep up with our heavy caseloads and our workloads. And just a reminder that forensic social workers really help us get to the root of these public safety issues. We can make Maryland safer just by getting involved early. And we really need you guys to investigate, or not investigate us, invest more in us. Thank you so much.
Good afternoon. My name is Cheryl Hughes Red, and I am the Secretary Treasurer for MDU Local 423. And I have worked for the Office of the Public Defender almost 19 years. I want to start off by saying that our agency desperately needs more resources. The attorneys represent our clients in all their court proceedings, but it's the core staff that touches their lives first. Whether it's the intake worker, file clerk, secretary, paralegal, or administrative staff. Our core staff is the foundation of our agency, but our foundation has cracks. Our foundation has cracks because we have core staff that are doing the job of 3 to 4 people. They're staying late, they're working on the weekends, and they're getting all the work done without extra pay. Recruitment and retention of core staff are vital to our agency. We're consistently working more with less, all to give our clients the best representation possible. Our agency talked today about the high caseloads that our attorneys carry. But what about the workload of the core staff that support them? Some secretaries in our agency support anywhere from 6 to 10 attorneys. That means they are copying, typing, downloading discovery, printing dockets, and many other duties times 10. We have core staff in our agency that are working at least 1 or 2 part-time jobs in addition to the job they do for OPD because they're not making a living wage and there's no promotional track for us. My chief attorney sent them written testimony on behalf of management, highlighting how investing in core staff is beneficial to our office. He talks about how our unit invested in a paralegal by sending her to training to receive certifications in cell phone mapping and analysis and cell phone extraction. He goes on to say how the work of this paralegal has saved the office $60,000 in outside expert fees. And that paralegal is me. Our core staff deserves salary increases to reflect the work that they do on a daily basis. I ask that you will support us with more resources. Thank you.
Thank you. Senator Jackson.
Quick question. Thank you all, by the way, and I hope we have your testimony in writing for the committee as we go forward. So the agency does not have investigators? Does the agency have investigators?
In the rural areas, we do have investigators, but we primarily contract investigators.
Okay, thank you.
And I would state that that was as a result of prior cuts that were required of the agency. My predecessor made the decision that that was the area where we were forced to make cuts, where cuts were made, as opposed to losing attorneys or other core staff members.
So, if I might, please, if you think you need them, I don't work in your office, but I work with your office. I think you need them. You may want to put that in your document request to us.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you.
Insights and valuables always.
Thank you. Thank you so much for coming down and we're always encouraged to seeing people come down and testify and defend what is right. We're making sure that the committee, we requested a report and then submitting the report, it's about the caseload and I think we got some answers, but I think it says also that the OPD's tracking case between the 2019 and 2023 using the work standards. We expected to adopt that 2023. It's the work, the operating budget recommendation actions.
Yes, so those are the standards that are expected to be released and adopted
In this year, okay.
last year.
And that's just on the cases, the work case of, yeah.
It's a way to keep track of the attorney's case workloads just year over year.
Year after year.
If, staffing levels are hopefully keeping pace with what an acceptable workload is.
And is this related to what she was talking about or not?
I don't believe so, but I like where your head's at, because I think what you were testifying to is we shouldn't just be looking at caseloads of attorneys. We should also be looking at ratios of support staff and core staff.
Yes.
And so I would suggest to the subcommittee that perhaps we think about expanding this language to include that as well.
If we could, that would be helpful.
Okay, thank you, Senator.
Thank you.
Senator Jackson.
Yeah, and if I might, so did you mention that you were doing the work and you weren't getting paid overtime? Is there a threshold for employees who don't get paid overtime?
So some of our core staff will work late hours, they will take work home, and they were not getting paid overtime. We have now been in discussion with management to make sure that any employee who works overtime will receive overtime.
All right,
pay.
just keep us informed on that. And if, for the agency head, if there is a threshold, it's very important. If there's a threshold of folks who don't get paid overtime, we'd like to see that.
So I just want to clarify for the record that individuals are not required to work overtime.
I understand.
No, if I just made for the record, that overtime is in fact paid either compensatory time or cash rate. So
Okay.
I just wanted to make that clear.
I appreciate that.
Yes.
But could we see that?
Oh, absolutely,
Thank you.
absolutely.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you for your state service, and thank you for being here, and thank you for your written testimony.
Thank you.
We greatly
you.
appreciate it. Okay,
I'm sorry,
Thank
Madam Chair, just as a matter of protocol, you indicated that these were the only 3 public comments. I was aware that there were more public comments.
that's all our system had signed up. We have significant written testimony. Is anybody else in the room who intended to testify in person? Okay. A few? Did you sign up online in advance?
Yes.
Okay, then please come up. We have 3 seats available. Apologies for the glitch in our system. And we appreciate you being here. Reminder that I believe we have a lot of written testimony and that we asked you to keep your remarks to 2.5 minutes, please. Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Madam Chair and members of the committee. My name is Cynthia Knight. I'm the Chief Human Resources Officer for the Office of the Public Defender. I'd like your indulgence as I take a page out of the book of John Lennon. Imagine a full-time vested employee who finds themselves required to work not only a second job, but a third job just to make ends meet. Imagine a secretary who was hired to support 2 attorneys that average 75 cases each a week, but due to staff shortages are now required to support 5 attorneys. Imagine an 18-year tenured attorney invested in the mission of OPD, forced to make the heartbreaking decision to leave just because the salary is too low. Sadly, there is no need to imagine because all of these instances exist in the Office of the Public Defender. Our attorneys are bearing a crushing workload. COVID was an additional blow to an already dire situation. Excuse me. OPD continues to advocate for additional resources to address chronic workload issues, including recovering from the loss of 201.5 core staff positions over the last decade. Our core staff employees are essential and begin the process of representation for our client. Attorneys and core staff work in unison, and you cannot assist one side without damaging the whole. OPD's most critical issues are directly correlated to workload and salary, as we've discussed. We cannot successfully recruit without an infusion to our starting salary, nor will we be able to retain competent staff without a reduction in workload. Our data has long supported a need for substantial intervention. Since fiscal 18, we have lost 300 attorneys, averaging 55 separations annually. However, in fiscal year 22, we saw a significant spike, losing 79 attorneys, a quarter of the overall workforce. 33 of those attorneys were our most experienced at the APD 3 level. Each time we lose an attorney to COVID or separation, that caseload must be reabsorbed by another attorney, and the ripple effect has caused a mass exodus. Please assist us in stopping this hemorrhaging of our staff. Value on investment in OPD is retention of dedicated public servants. Thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Hi, thank you for letting us speak today. My name's Anisha Latal. I'm the Division Chief of the Post-Conviction Defenders, a division of obviously the Office of the Public Defender. And our unit determines whether errors of a constitutional nature occurred during trial or appeal and attempts to remedy those errors so that justice can truly prevail. When citizens lose their liberty as a result of mistakes made during the process, our division steps in to right those wrongs. Our efforts may lead to a variety of forms of relief, but mostly it leads to a reduction of years of sentences off of someone's sentence that they received. Clearly, the work we do is extremely important, but it also saves this state a lot of money. And I want to tell that to you guys so that you understand how impactful this actually is for the budget of the state of Maryland. In 2022, which is only just 1 year of our work, the people in my division worked and got a reduction of a total of 586 years shaved off of client sentences. In my estimation, that results in a savings to the state of Maryland of about $21 million. And you may be wondering, well, how did I get to that number? It costs the state of Maryland approximately $54,000 per year per inmate to house that person in medical, all of the things that is required. Assuming that most people serve about 66% of their sentences, some more, some less, depending on the crime and whether they get credit, the actual number of years that I figure are shaved in reality is about 390 years. 390 years times $54,000 is about $21 million. So in 1 year, the work of my division not only assured the constitutional rights of our clients, it also more than paid for the cost to run our actual division. And in addition to that, we secured the immediate or very near future release of 18 additional people who are mostly lifers. The majority of them are elderly. Most of them have significant medical issues. All of them have been incarcerated for over 20 years, most of them incarcerated for over 30 years. It is inhumane to continue to incarcerate this geriatric population of people. The majority of these clients were placed in reentry programs. They all provide wraparound services. They are all doing well. They are reestablishing relationships with children, siblings, and in some cases, even parents. I had one client that was released about 2 weeks ago, 63 years old, with significant medical issues. And luckily, he was able to spend quality time with his mother, who is in hospice care. Yes, I'm almost done. Thank you. The savings to the state for the release of these men is more difficult to calculate. Prison costs to house the elderly are much higher than $54,000 a year. Thus, the savings to the state of Maryland to no longer pay to incarcerate this group of 18 people is without a doubt substantial. Furthermore, the financial and social implications of incarceration for our clients and their immediate families is incalculable. Our division reunites families, helps to stabilize communities, gets people back into the workforce, and restores dignity. The value of investing in OPD is not only a financial return in the case of my division, but it also supports Maryland families. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon. My name is Brian Siseni. I'm the director of a new project in the Public Defender's Office called the Decarceration Initiative. Over the last decade, the OPD has led efforts to persuade courts to release rehabilitated, non-dangerous individuals from prison. By investing in OPD, you invest in these second chances and spare taxpayers the high cost of unnecessary incarceration. In the last starting around 2012 to about 2017, OPD led the effort to secure the release of almost 200 elderly people from prison, following the Unger decision at a projected savings, according to the Justice Policy Institute, for Maryland taxpayers of $185 million. Today, I lead a project that since January 2022 has secured the release of, I had wrote 24, I'm so happy to say as of this morning, it's 25 people who were imprisoned as kids. According to the DOC's 2022 fiscal year report, it costs almost $60,000 per year to incarcerate somebody. So every year, just those 25 are out. It saves the taxpayers $1.5 million. More importantly, many of these clients become a force for good within their communities after they're released, and that's what your investment in OPD helps to support. With these cases, like many others, an effective legal team is not limited just to the lawyer and the client. It is important to have paralegals and administrative assistants involved to help track down and gather documents and help with the immense amount of paperwork involved. There are many clients who have mental or physical health needs that make it imperative to involve one of OPD's excellent social workers to assess those needs, help to educate the court and counsel about them, and plan for ways to meet them. In some cases, we need to retain expert psychologists to conduct risk assessments. Our community engagement team identifies and works with organizations in the community that can then assist clients with the challenges of reentry if they're released. So I conclude by saying effective representation is more than a single overburdened lawyer working alone. Effective representation requires that team approach that you've heard so much about today. The value of investing in OPD in that team approach is that it saves money, changes lives, and ultimately improves our community. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the committee. My name is Erica Suter. I'm an assistant public defender and I'm director of the Innocence Project Clinic at the University of Baltimore School of Law. In 2008, the Office of the Public Defender formed a partnership, a collaboration with the University of Baltimore in the Innocence Project Clinic. There have been nearly 3,400 exonerations nationwide since 1982 or 1989. 52 of those have been in Maryland. And so a question came up today sort of about what OPD is doing to develop their pipeline and work in collaboration with other stakeholders. And the Innocence Project Clinic is one of those things that supports that effort. I am responsible as director of the Innocence Project for representing individuals in Maryland who claim, who assert that they are innocent of the crimes of which they have been convicted. We get about 600 applications for assistance in a single year. But also we provide hands-on experience for law students. They are assigned real cases. They work as Rule 19 attorneys under my supervision, and they gain real experience interviewing witnesses, interviewing clients, conducting factual investigations, preparing motions, litigating in court, and developing collaboration skills. Students also work with experts in fields of forensic DNA testing and other fields of forensic science. So investing in OPD not only provides redress for innocent individuals who have been wrongfully convicted, but it also promotes collaboration with area law schools, and it also promotes a pipeline of future defenders.
Thank you, Ms. Suter. We appreciate it. Quick question on, because pipeline is an important issue for our subcommittee. Approximately in recent memory, how many of your UB Law graduates have transitioned into the Office of OPD?
I do not have that number. I'm happy to get it for you and provide it to you. UB provides a number of law students in sort of various capacities who work as law clerks. They also work under Brian Cicenti's decarceration initiative. And then also there are students through the clinic who apply as well. And I will say that at UB, the Innocence Project Clinic is the most requested clinic at the law school with the longest wait list of about 54 students more than any other clinic.
Okay, we appreciate that. And if we were to find a way to develop a law clerk program within OPD, would that be of interest to your students?
I would imagine so, yes.
Okay. Senator Roosevelt.
Yeah, I don't have the answer to this right now, but maybe you do. Do you know what percentage of your law students have full-time jobs, part-time jobs while they're going to school?
I do not have the number off the top of my head. I will say that UB in particular, because it is a public school and access school, that there are probably a greater majority of students working full-time. And the Innocence Project Clinic is an evening seminar to make it accessible to people who are working full-time.
Right, but that's why I asked, because I figured UB would be above average, but I'd love to see the numbers because it goes to what we were talking about earlier. If we could have them working in the public defender's office while they're going to law school instead of working someplace else, it'd be a win-win.
Certainly.
That'd be great. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you.
Anybody else attending today's hearing who wishes to testify? Okay, with that, thank you to OPD and thank you to all our folks who came and spent their day with us testifying. We appreciate you. Last but certainly not least, we have Department of State Police. Madeline Miller is our analyst. Madeline, when you are ready.
Good afternoon. My name is Madeline Miller, and today I'll be presenting the analysis for the Department of State Police. In fiscal 2024, the budget increases by less than 1% compared with fiscal 2022. However, the working appropriation has grown by $61.5 million, largely attributable to salary enhancements and the addition of positions added via deficiencies. The analysis begins with a review of some managing for results data. As a full service law enforcement agency, traffic enforcement remains a chief responsibility of the department. Exhibit 1 on page 4 shows the rate of traffic fatalities per 100 million vehicle miles traveled. Though travel decreased during the pandemic, the number of fatalities rose. In 2021, VMT rose 11.9% and fatalities fell 1.7%, but neither returned to their pre-pandemic levels. In calendar 2022, the number of traffic fatalities is expected to decrease further. On page 5, Exhibit 2 details the number of arrests by state police and other law enforcement agencies, along with the number of impairment-related fatal collisions. The rate of impairment-related fatal collisions continued to grow in 2021 to 0.33 and is expected to rise to 0.34 in 2022. This suggests that there are more impairment-related fatal collisions than there were prior to the pandemic. In calendar 2021, DUI arrests rose 5.8% as DUI arrests by state police and other law enforcement agencies grew by 7.3% and 5.1% respectively. The second piece of performance analysis begins on page 6. Due to changes in the definition of domestically related crimes over time and the state not having a distinct crime of domestic violence, the annual MFR submission includes data on domestically related crimes. These are reports that involve any crime committed by a suspect against a victim who is a person eligible for relief as defined in section 4-501 of the family law article, or who had a sexual relationship with the suspect within 12 months before the commission of the crime. Exhibit 3 shows that reported domestically related crimes fell during the pandemic. Between calendar 2019 and 2020, the rate fell 7.7%. In calendar 2021, the rate fell approximately 1%. This data might suggest that crimes against people eligible for relief fell, but it is possible that additional crimes may have been committed and that fewer were reported than would have otherwise been due to the nature of the pandemic and the health response required. I bring this up to say that while much of the analysis focuses on crime data, reported crime statistics are not able to capture the complete picture of crime in the state. The third piece of performance analysis begins on page 7 and the exhibit is on page 8. One of the department's objectives in achieving an efficient and effective workforce that allows it to meet its other strategic goals is to recruit trooper applicants capable and willing to complete the high-intensity entry-level training program. The department has experienced a significant decrease in the number of qualified applicants since calendar 2020. In calendar 2021, the number of applicants declined approximately 65% compared with the first class of calendar 2020. Applicants must meet additional qualifications and eventual class sizes are much lower. However, the analysis will now turn to a discussion of the past budget. In fiscal 2022 closeout, the department reverted or canceled $3.9 million in general funds. The reversion of general funds is primarily due to vacancies. Of the canceled special funds, approximately 7 were due to vacancies and the remaining 3.7 million was canceled due to insufficient funds within the speed monitoring systems fund, and general funds were used instead to support vehicle fleet costs. It is also the case in the working appropriation that there were insufficient funds from the speed monitoring systems fund to support the department's vehicle fleet. One of the fiscal 23 deficiencies replaces special fund expenditure with $3.8 million in general funds to support the purchase of replacement vehicles, equipment, and in-car radios. Other proposed deficiencies authorize the addition of 19 positions to support the gun center and provide 22 positions for the licensing division to handle increased caseloads as well as increased responsibilities established by Chapter 55 of 2022. Last session, the department received $5 million in funds from the dedicated purpose account in supplemental number 5 to provide grants to police departments to acquire license plate readers. The department reports that it has approved plans to award $4.7 million for mobile license plate reader systems, flexible use systems, and fixed site systems so far. As for funds provided in the allowance, the department's total is $561.5 million, nearly 83% of which goes towards personnel. The Department of State Police includes the Maryland State Police and the Office of the State Fire Marshal. So within Maryland State Police, there's the Office of the Superintendent, which establishes departmental policy and receives 6% of the allowance. The Field Operations Bureau, which oversees 23 police barracks and divisions, including the Automotive Safety Enforcement Division, the Commercial Vehicle Enforcement Division, and patrol operations along JFK Memorial Highway, receives 46.3%. 19.2% goes to the Criminal Investigations Bureau, which directs investigative and forensic operations. The Support Services Bureau receives about 26% of the department's overall allowance, and this bureau is comprised of 4 distinct commands: personnel, technology, information management, logistics, and the Maryland State Police Aviation. The final program in Maryland State Police is the Vehicle Theft Prevention Council, which accounts for 0.6% of the total allowance. The second component of the department is the Office of the State Fire Marshal. The office conducts arson-related investigations and ensures compliance with State Fire Prevention Code. OFSM receives 2.4% of the allowance. And moving now to the proposed budget change in Exhibit 6. One of the ways in which the budget grows net of fiscal 23 deficiencies is for 5 new positions for the Office of the State Fire Marshal. These 5 safety inspectors positions are required to keep pace with the increasing demand for inspecting fire exits and safety standards for places of public assembly. The largest source of growth is the annualization of the 4.5% COLA from November 2022. Gas and oil costs also increased by $2.5 million. Growth is offset by the removal of one-time funding for data storage for the Criminal Intelligence Center and the removal of grants for license plate readers provided via supplemental budget number 5. Another funding change that the analysis explores is that for vehicle expenses. Of the 161 vehicles that the department will purchase in the allowance, 5 are provided for the new positions within OSFM, and the remaining are replacement vehicles. Under the automated speed camera program, State Police receives speed camera special fund revenues to support the program's operations and to fund the acquisition of replacement vehicles for its fleet. These funds appear in the agency's budget as expenditures supported through the Speed Monitoring Systems Fund. Exhibit 7 shows that Speed Monitoring Systems Fund has not been able to cover the costs of vehicle purchases in recent fiscal years, necessitating the use of funds and of general funds, and additional general fund support may be required in future years if revenues from the automated speed camera program do not increase. I'm going to skip ahead to the Vehicle Theft Prevention Council. Growth in this grant funding increases in the allowance from $1.9 million in fiscal 23 to $3.1 million in fiscal 24. The department reports with the additional funds, VTPC will begin new programs to combat carjackings in addition to car thefts. A 2021 program evaluation by the Department of Legislative Services found that the Maryland jurisdictions receiving the bulk of direct VTPC funding have experienced a greater decrease in the vehicle theft rate than jurisdictions that did not receive direct funding. Appendix 3 of the analysis provides a summary of recent grant awards. And DLS asks that the department comment on how PC uses crime statistics in order to target funds to areas experiencing high rates of car thefts and carjackings. A discussion of the department's personnel data begins on page 15. The 5 positions are added for the Office of the State Fire Marshal. 41 positions are also added in fiscal 2023 for the Gun Center and for the Licensing Division. Though the department's necessary vacancy rate is 7.15%, it currently has an 11.5% vacancy rate with over 100 vacancies over turnover. Vacancies are explored further in Exhibit 8. Between fiscals 2017 and 2022, the department operated with an average of 10.4% of its sworn and civilian positions vacant. And while the vacancy rate for sworn positions decreased about 9.2% in fiscal 2022 and is estimated to fall further in fiscal 2023, vacancies among civilian positions have risen, reaching 16.5% in fiscal 2022 and 20% in fiscal 23. DSP reports that the allowance includes the reclassification of 7 vacant positions to the Human Resources Division to provide additional personnel staff support. But DLS is also asking that the department comment on the efforts being taken to retain and recruit for its civilian positions. Overall vacancies in fiscal 21 through 23 are shown in Exhibit 9. The department's turnover rate is currently budgeted at a lower level than its vacancy rate. Though funding all regular positions for the full year in fiscal 23 would cost over $482 million. The working appropriation only contains $457.4 million. Given that vacancies so far only decreased modestly, the $4.4 million figure is likely more than the agency will need. DLS estimates the working appropriation is over budgeted by approximately $18.9 million, but that figure does not include potentially higher overtime expenses related to vacancies, which the department would reassign its general funds for in fiscal 23 closeout. The issues section of my analysis is on page 18 with the discussion of statewide crime statistics. The department is responsible for collecting crime data from local law enforcement agencies and compiling the information into Maryland's Uniform Crime Report. The most recent publication of this is the 2020 volume. Publication of the 2021 volume has been delayed until mid-March due to numerous reporting agencies being non-compliant with the new federal reporting standard. DLS recommends adding annual budget language restricting funds pending the receipt of the 2022 UCR, and this recommendation is provided on page 26 of the document. The delay is associated to the transition to NIBRS, a nationwide effort led by the FBI. The state's program was declared in compliance as of January 1st, 2021. However, approximately 48% of data contributors in Maryland are not yet compliant with the federal system. To collect information from non-compliant contributors, state police developed a dashboard tool for contributors to manually input their records. This data collection process is slow, though. Exhibit 10 provides an example of statewide crime data that is available from the department's MFR. These statistics are not comparable to those published at the national level due to the different reporting systems. To overcome this challenge, the state police is reporting that the 2021 UCR will be published in 2 sections, one using the previous methodology of crime reporting and the other using NIBRS, so that the state will be able to compare its data to past state years as well as to the national figures. State police should comment on the operational difficulties that it faces due to the delay in the publication of the UCR and what actions, if any, it can take to prevent the 2022 document from being similarly delayed. The second issue relates to the licensing division. The licensing division administers provisions of state law and regulations related to the licensing and registration of firearms, handgun permits, security guards, and other licensing functions. In June of 2022, the Supreme Court issued a ruling which has had a substantial impact on the division's caseloads. Pursuant to the Supreme Court decision, Governor Hogan directed state police to suspend the state's good and substantial reason standard for possessing a handgun wear and carry permit. Accordingly, the number of applications for handgun permits increased dramatically in 2022, as shown in Exhibit 11. There was a 600% increase in 2022 compared with calendar 2021. State police receives 20 positions to handle this increased caseloads because the public safety article establishes various requirements related to how quickly the division must turn around an application. An additional 2 positions were also required for the division to handle its increased responsibilities, which requires state police to suspend or revoke a certain dealer's license if the dealer is found in violation of specific offenses. The addition of positions should help to also reduce the division's overtime usage. Overtime usage in hours is shown in Exhibit 12, as well as the number of average weekly applications received. Overtime expenses for the licensing division increased accordingly from $2.4 million in fiscal 2022 to $4.1 million in fiscal 2023. Overtime usage is also tracked for specific types of permits, such as the usage for handgun permit applications, which is shown in Exhibit 13. While only 316 hours of overtime were needed in June 2022 to meet the caseload demands, approximately 1,400 were needed in August and over 1,700 were needed in November. From June to November, the monthly figure increased 447.2%. Since the start of fiscal 23, the licensing division has averaged approximately 9 vacant regular positions each month. DLS asked that the department comment on the efforts taken by the division to ensure compliance with mandated application review and determination timeframes, including the use of contractual positions. State police should further comment on how the addition of 22 positions in the working appropriation will help the division to manage its caseloads and the ability to fill those positions, given the existing difficulties with hiring civilian positions, most of which the new positions are. The third and final issue appears on page 23. During the 2021 session, the General Assembly expressed concern with allegations of racial insensitivity and lack of diversity among the DSP workforce. In response, a diversity study group met on June 28th of 2021, and state police submitted the Workforce Diversity Action Plan on July of 2021. In continuing to monitor the department's progress in addressing this issue, the committee has asked for an update on the further development and implementation of the action plan in the 2022 JCR. That update includes that on January 1st of 2022, the state police created the Office of Equity Inclusion. Among other responsibilities, this office has program oversight of an interagency agreement between state police and Morgan State University. The interstate agency agreement began on June 1 of 2022. As indicated in Exhibit 14, the department's civilian workforce is more racially and gender diverse than its sworn workforce. DLS recommends the addition of committee narrative to require state police to continue reporting on the progress that it makes towards achieving its diversity action plan. This recommendation can be found on page 25 of the document. In July of 2022, the U.S. Department of Justice announced it would be investigating the department in order to determine if their hiring and promotional practices had violated Title VII of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. Additionally, a class action lawsuit was filed against the department by current and former employees in October of 2022 that alleges racial discrimination in promoting and disciplinary practices. If possible, state police should comment on its cooperation with the DOJ investigation and on the class action lawsuit. That concludes my presentation, and I would be happy to take any questions at this time.
Thank you, Madeline. I have 2, so I'm going to start with 1 and then I'll move to the members of the subcommittee. On the reversions, can you speak a little bit if you have any knowledge of historical trends? Does this happen often for state police? Are we reverting? Are they reverting? Right. It's a mix of funds,
Yes,
I imagine.
it's a mix of funds. In the last year, some of the reimbursable funds were delayed or were reverted just due to a timing issue with when the department was able to expend its funds. Federal funds were also reverted just due to the federal awards being smaller than anticipated. In the past, the state previously reverted funds due to vacancies in both general and special funds. General funds are often used for other purposes within the department though. So like the number that's reported for vacancies, those general funds are also being used to fulfill demand of higher costs in the department, which includes vehicle purchases, particularly in the last few years. So general funds that would have been reverted due to vacancies were instead used to support the state's fleet of vehicles.
And for my edification, who signs off on that?
That's something that the department is allowed to do and that all departments are allowed to do with their general funds in closeout.
In closeout.
Yes. They've processed budget amendments, so that does go through DBM and is approved.
Could you get to look into if there is a historical trend with reversions? It's just something we don't hear about often. Okay, so I'd appreciate that. Thank you. Senator Jackson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Two questions, one along the reversion. How often have we seen it regarding vehicle replacements?
So I believe it was something that occurred several fiscal years ago as well, and is coming up again just as the speed monitoring system fund is not able to cover all the costs of the vehicle fleet.
Yeah, so if you could add that to the information that you're going to provide us, and does that include equipment, other equipment, agency equipment?
Yes, so the speed monitoring system fund is also able to support other costs associated with the fleet other than strictly vehicle replacements. That might include costs like for in-car radios, for example.
Could you add that for us? Sure. Secondly, do you have doing your assessment, do you have any information on barrack staffing?
I don't have anything specific in the analysis.
Okay.
What information are you looking for?
I'll save it for the agency, staffing at the barrack, as well as barrack replacements. I know that there are a couple of barracks, at least a few barracks that have been on the list for a while, Forestville in particular.
Yes, that's covered in my capital analysis of state police. So I don't have that document right in front of me, but I can make sure that it's sent to you.
It hasn't moved, has it?
I mean, it's still in the same place. It's a physical building.
We hope that we'll speak about that later. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Respect.
Yes, page 7 and 8, where you're talking about applicants who meet minimum processing standards.
Yes.
Class 1, I have no idea what that means.
So those would be people who apply to, who initially apply to, for going through their training program, but that aren't immediately disqualified for some other reason. So when HR would be, or whoever's going through the process of reviewing these applications, there are some things which would automatically disqualify someone from being considered in another round of the application process.
So it's a stage in the process?
Yes. So for example, the number of applicants right now in 2022 was approximately 1,600.
Right.
Each class is only on average about 42 individuals. So there is a process of narrowing down from the number of applicants who is most qualified to be a member of one of the classes.
So it's 1,600 applicants narrowed to 42 folks actually pursuing it?
Yes, so it's quite a large number, but something that's reported in their MFR information is just the total number of interest in the state. And so the Exhibit 4 is showing that there's been a marked decrease in the number of applications that the department has received from like pre-pandemic times to now.
Because minimum processing standards class 1 means applicant?
So minimum processing standards class 1 would be would not be all applicants, but it would be those applicants who make it to the first consideration round.
Okay, thank you. That's
it. Thank you, Madeline. All right, we have before us our brand new, recently announced acting superintendent, Colonel Roland Butler. Colonel, you'd like to introduce your team?
Good morning. Sorry, good afternoon, Madam Chair and members of the Senate Public Safety, Transportation, Environment Committee. I'm Colonel Roland Butler, Acting Superintendent of the Maryland Department of State Police. I'd like to begin by apologizing for the late submission of our documents. Hopefully you get a chance to read those in their entirety beyond what we've discussed here today. Madam Chair, thank you for the opportunity to be here today. Having only been in my position for a week, I apologize for not having met many members of the subcommittee before today, but I look forward to the opportunity to meet you in the coming days and weeks. With me today is Paul Abel, our Chief Financial Officer, and behind me are the department's senior leaders. We hope that we're able to meet your expectations and provide you with information being sought via your responses. Before we begin, I'd like to take a moment to thank Ms. Madeline Miller. I appreciate her thorough analysis and professionalism in working with my team. Madam Chair, you have our written responses to the analysis, but if you don't mind, I'd like to highlight just a couple of very important areas to us. Civilian vacancies. As I'm sure you and the members of the subcommittee have heard time and time again, during every budget hearing, vacancies and staffing shortages continue to be a challenge. For the Department of State Police, I sit before you encouraged by the progress and hard work performed every day by our Human Resources Division. Despite continued turnover, the addition of 42 positions in calendar year 2022, our Human Resources Division was able to hire 121 new civilian employees in 2022, an increase of 62 over 2021. We expect an even better hiring performance in 2023 as we embark on a new calendar year with a larger and fully trained HRD staff positioned to take advantage of salary enhancements and offer more competitive starting salaries than seen in prior years. Finally, I, as well as my entire leadership team, are eagerly awaiting the results and the recommendations of the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Focus Group and the Workforce Assessment Project. As we previously reported, our interagency agreement with Morgan State University is expected to provide us with valuable insight from both sworn and civilian workforce, as well as the communities we serve. By better understanding the feelings, perceptions, and beliefs of the people who provide and receive our public safety services, I'm confident we will make a positive, purposeful, actionable changes needed that the people deserve. Regarding the 2021 Uniform Crime Report, as you already have heard, there are a number of changes in the National Crime Reporting Program. As we've reported previously in the previous JCRs, the FBI now requires states to convert to NIBRS, my apologies, reporting system. Admittedly, the nation's conversion to NIBRS from summary reporting has not been without its challenges. In 2022, the Department of Justice review of the transition of law enforcement agencies to NIBRS funding, data input, training gaps, and technology procurement were all listed as challenges cited as being responsible for significant delays and obstacles preventing some law enforcement agencies from a successful transition. Maryland is no different. Our data contributors continue to report difficulties with procuring record management systems capable of capturing and reporting NIBRS data. They report challenges with manual entry of incidents in the NIBRS collection tools, training gaps, and inconsistencies in data definitions. In Maryland, our law enforcement partners are submitting their data as required. Unfortunately, the data is in both summary and NIBRS formats. Quality assurance reviews have identified data inconsistencies that demand attention and must be reconciled before publication. I expect the Crime in Maryland book to be published at the beginning of March, and caution, it will look different. What is not different is the dedication and commitment of the Maryland State Police to assist and support data contributors during this period of transition and beyond. Madam Chair, I'm available to answer questions you and the committee may have.
Thank you, Colonel. I'm going to start with the UCR because I'm going to channel our chair of JPR, Senator Smith, who would probably say if you were here, it's incredibly difficult for the General Assembly to make informed, timely public policy decisions on public safety without the UCR every year. So appreciating there's data inconsistencies, while you are responsible for gathering it, you are not responsible for ensuring the locals get it to you in a timely manner. That being said, how can we help you help our locals get that together? Because we really expect it to be on time next year so that we can make the most informed public policy decisions beginning in January of 24. So what can we do to be helpful?
First off, I'd like to thank you all for your understanding. We the in repository, we compile the report. As we mentioned before, there have been a myriad of reasons, mostly centering around that conversion period. People have elected to go with different RMS or reporting systems, only to realize it's more difficult to extract the data than they anticipated. We tried to work with them as best possible. When we get the handwritten results, obviously they're not matching up as they should. At this point, we want to be able to have a patient approach with them and allow them to pick the vendor. This RMS system goes beyond their reporting standards. This is going to affect everything they do every day. So if they need to work with their vendor, I'd ask you to be patient. If they need to go to a different vendor for a different product, I'd ask that we be patient and try to do that. We're doing everything we can to facilitate them getting that data to us in a timely fashion, to include going out, meeting with them and talking to them about what other counties may be doing to tackle this objective.
Okay. It might sound like a rudimentary suggestion. Do you have dedicated staff, 1 or 2 or 3 people within state police whose sole job is to ensure the data for UCR is compiled and executed on?
We have an entire staff of people located at the security annex.
Okay.
That is one of their functions. They also deals with the acres reports to make sure those are coming in, processed accordingly, and those reports are processed as they should be. It's a taxing job. Make no mistake about it. It's a taxing job and we work our hardest to get it right. You know, as I said, we're the end recipient. No matter who gives us data, they're going to look at us and say, hey, how did you represent us with that data? Did you get it right? So we're doing our very best to do that.
Okay. And a number of us represent municipalities, except for Senator Salling. Appreciating that there are 157 plus all the counties plus everybody else. Are there traditionally actors who are slower than others?
In past years, there have been counties that experience problems, municipalities that experience problems. I think approximately 3 years back, we had a larger county come in and explain their position. They were ahead of the curve moving to a new reporting system. They worked out a lot of the bugs with that reporting system. One of the problems we had, there were 23 other municipalities within that county that didn't go the same route. They chose their own vendor, so they may still be trying to work through those difficulties. But as I said earlier, we work with them. We're trying to help them get to where we need them to be.
Can you give us your best guess as to when we'll get the UCR for 2022 data?
UCR for 2022. I'll call up Major Gregory.
You can tell this is a point of contention for me.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am. So basically, by November 1st is when all agencies have to have their data in for 22. So long as we have that, you know, we would love to have it earlier, right? So if you notice in the past 2 years, we've had the book in by October, which has been phenomenal. Unfortunately, the backtrack with NIBRS, right, is caused, as the Colonel said, many difficulties, right? And the FBI is experiencing that too. So I would project, if we have all the data, right? We're learning from everything now, right? To improve and take our next steps. And then next year, my projection would be, we have everything by November 1st, by the end of the year, is what I would say.
Okay.
That would be best case scenario by November 1st data.
Okay. If you do have issues with particular counties or municipalities and we happen to represent them, please let us know.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yes,
Thank
Madam
you.
Chairman. Thank you.
Senator Jackson.
Sir.
Colonel, I appreciate you not citing Prince George's County, but it's okay. It is okay. I understand, having come from the law enforcement world, I understand the challenges with the county with that many municipalities, but you know, we're your partners. Trust us and let us know when you're having some challenges. The Police Association, the Prince George's Police Association, you know, I mean, wherever the nudge is needed, let us know.
Sir, I can't reiterate more that we've worked well with them over the years. We built some truly lasting relationships to impact the citizens within Prince George's County, and we'll continue to work with them.
I appreciate that. Madam Chair, if I might, Colonel, if you could, you spoke of 162 or so civilian hires last year.
Yes, sir.
Within the agency, could you get us some information on the classifications for those hires
I'd
as
have to-
well? You can get it to us.
Thank you.
Yeah, you can forward that to us as well. And the projections on where these, how you're recruiting them and the pools that you're going to be talking about. And Senator Roserup is going to probably follow up with his methodology soon. Do you have a salary schedule for your civilian employees?
Yes, we do have a salary schedule for our civilian employees. And I think as members of the committee may know, we just established a new salary schedule for our emergency dispatchers, reclassifying them completely, trying to put them on par.
Yeah, definitely through serving on Next Generation 911 and the partnership with your agency as well, which leads us to your equipment, the reversions to get equipment in the agency and vehicles, and the lack of funding, the insufficient funds from the speed monitoring. Is that going to be a problem going forward? Or do we have a resolution for that? Or do we need to find?
I can speak to you on how the problem occurs, the ebb and flow of the speed camera system. If you look back in 2021, we processed approximately 306,000 violations. 2022, that dropped off to just over 265,000 violations. 41,000 decrease in violations processed in 2022. The decrease in violations is because there was a decrease in construction along the highways, obviously where those cameras are located. If we fast forward to 2023, we've already processed just over 87,500 violations, and we're only talking the first 2 months of this year. During that same period in 2021, we only processed 41,000. So this is an increase. We're hoping this increase holds true. If you want to compare that to previous years, we're well ahead of the curve, and there is the potential that we will end up on the high side of things. The increase in violations in 2023 is largely because of 2 new deployments of construction zone on high volume highways, northbound 495 at I-95, north and southbound I-95 at I-695.
Okay, cool. So the question, and the reason I'm asking you the question is because, again, we're your partners. If you think it's going to be a problem, then make sure that you put that in information going forward. If you don't think it's going to be a problem, that's fine.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Could you also give us a breakdown of your staffing at each one of the barracks? And you can send that to us at a later date.
Yes, sir.
As well. So, and I will reserve the rest of my questions for offline, sir. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Madam Chair. There's a couple of things that concern me, and I believe it did concern our state police and how we're working together with our towers and our truck drivers. We know that there's like serious incidents that do happen. And so we need the towing industry and our towing association, the state of Maryland, to work together with the state police. We know that there has been a bill that's been throwing out a lot of controversy with our towers. And I've talked to them, and I've never had an opportunity to talk to you, and never had a chance to even talk to I talked briefly to some of our trucking industry in our association. But I want to know, I know that it's a big responsibility for our state police, our towers to work together. And I've had meetings with them locally. And we just want to make sure that we're all on the same page. I just want to know, are we going about this the right way? Is it working out well? Or is this causing more conflict? And is there something more that we can do to possibly help this out?
Sure. Thank you for your question. I can take you back on the history. I'm not familiar with that bill. Obviously, I am just returning. However, if you want to go back to 2010, 2011, that's when that conversation with the towing industry really took off. We noticed trends and concerns with complaints coming in about exorbitant fees, things of that nature. And we tackled that with the Maryland Highway Safety Office, or CHART. We asked them for training to help our troopers make better determinations as to when to call that tow. You have something as simple as an overturned vehicle. The first thing you might do as a trooper think, okay, I'm trying to get that roadway open. I want that vehicle removed. It may have to be shored up. There's no sense in having that tow truck there waiting for 3 or 4 hours. Make sure you get the right type of tow truck. Do you need a rotator? Those are things that we rely on State Highway to teach us and be at the forefront to explain, hey, you're towing experts. This is what the equipment that you will probably need. This is the way you should look at the scene. Those conversations with the State Highway Administration led us into conversations with the towing industry. We would like to make sure that we're both on the same page. The end recipient or the end user in this whole thing deserves that from us. And that's the citizen. They've already been through a tragic enough event. And this is not something that has zero impact because it's built against insurance. There's an impact there.
And I look at it this way because I'm looking at our heavy towing industry with our trucks.
Correct.
So we know there's a problem there. I've been working with them and trying to work that out, and I know it's these incidents that do happen, these accidents that do happen. I know most of the time they're very serious, and we just want to make sure we do get the right people. I know we have a priority list that they use to making sure they go about it the right way. And so, and I believe they're doing a better job, as we found out, but we just want to make sure that everything is going smoothly. And if it is, I'm happy with it. If it's not, I think we need to work together to make sure that it continues to go, we're going down the right path.
Senator, thank you for your understanding, and more importantly, your understanding of the complexity of these tows. Some require 2-3 pieces of apparatus.
And I got one more if you don't mind. From what I've seen on 695, what I've seen on 95, what I've seen on other major highways, I see people driving at 100 miles an hour. I see people going to 120 miles an hour. I see people flying on the roads. They're going so fast that I might be, I'll be honest with you, I might be going 65 miles an hour, but they're going by me so fast on the sides of the road. On out, and I've seen other people have seen this on major highways. And to me, I know we don't have the resources. I know it's been a problem. And I know at times our state police are working with our city people, working with our county. I know the MTA are working with you. And I know we're trying to expand. What can we do to help these type of people that are driving out here? I mean, I gotta say it, like maniacs that are putting innocent people in harm's way. Because again, I sometimes just drive by, and my wife tells me all the time, when she goes from 695 to 95, and I see the people out there driving, and it's scary out here. It's very, I'm fearful for some people. I'm fearful for myself sometimes. I know our people see this. Is there something more that we need to do to enforce? Is there something we need to do to help this out?
Senator, thank you for that question. We've worked hard to build partnerships, as you said, with the Maryland Transportation Authority Police Department, Anne Arundel County Police Department on the far side where you transition over, and also the Baltimore County Police Department. The super speeders and the people that drive with reckless abandon are truly a concern to us. We have looked at the 3 E's: education, enforcement, engineering. We work closely with the State Highway Administration on engineering aspects, and also with the Maryland Highway Safety Office on the educational aspect. We have to keep driving down the educational portion and keep working collaboratively to look at the times that these crashes are occurring and make sure we do our very best to deploy extra resources. And as you said, it's not as random as people think. We know where there's going to be bottlenecking and channelization coming off 695, 795, given time of day, where someone may want to use that wide shoulder as their own personal throughway.
Yeah.
We're working hard on that, but we only stop one vehicle at a time. Our troopers do our very best, and we'll continue to push them towards that goal to do their very best to keep people safe.
And I believe you do. It just concerns me. When I see a person driving on the side of the road and they're going 90 miles an hour, I'm like, I pray there's a state trooper down there. But I pray for the other people that they're safe.
Sir, every morning, the command staff and I behind me, we look at the morning briefing, and you're looking at fatalities. The fatality captures that loss of life, but we never know what that ripple effect is, what that individual could have become, or who they were supporting. All those things are problematic and are a concern to me and to my executive command team.
Thank you.
Sure.
Before I get into personnel, I want to follow up on Senator Sally's question, because my wife drives back and forth on
495.
On 495, on 95 or on
Route 1 interchange,
or on Baltimore Washington Parkway.
Yes, sir.
4 times a week. Years ago, we moved we added a force multiplier on speeding to police with speed cameras near schools, and we've done other places in residential areas. Listening to your all conversation, I never thought about it exactly this way, but it makes sense. Between you and Senator Sallings, you have a pretty good idea of where these folks going on the side to try to go fast around. Has there been discussion about putting cameras on those and just not have to have a trooper there to catch people?
You know that the locations of those cameras unfortunately require legislation approval to be used beyond a school zone. What we have done, and we can think about an area you're familiar with, 695, 70, the park and ride. We had a lot of speeders or car gatherings there. We put a pole camera so we can monitor that remotely and then deploy resources as we need. We did enter into a partnership that is currently in 695 and we'll be moving to 495, 95 with the Traffic Incident Management Unit. We have a dedicated group of troopers, motor officers, and also individuals that are in cars that we try to deploy and given time frames that we know are going to have the greatest impact to people.
That's great, but I'm trying to figure where the cameras fit into this. You say you do have cameras in those places, or you don't have cameras in those places?
We have poll cameras that do not issue citations or anything.
Okay, you have
But
cameras.
it lets us know what time to go. And in the area you're
I-
familiar with,
Yes.
super problem similar to his, the parking ride.
Yeah.
495 at the 95 split. You get a lot of car gatherings there. And that's something we work vigorously with MCAC, Montgomery County Police to track those car gatherings, to make sure we have adequate resources in place, be it an aviation component, extra enforcement personnel, or even plainclothes personnel. I think not too far from Route 1 in your area.
Right.
I think you remember the car gathering with the cars doing donuts and spinning out.
Yeah.
We use that data. We use images captured from the camera. It took us a while, but we tracked down those violators and they were charged.
Good. I just want to push this point though. I mean, would it make sense, has it been discussed, to try to issue citations for people?
It would be truly helpful. It'd make a difference. It would save lives.
Okay, well, I'd appreciate it if you develop an idea of what that would look like and let us know. I realize it would take legislation, but cameras work. And so I didn't think about it in the context of Senator Salling raised. That's really, really helpful. So I'd love to hear about that. Now I'm going to get off crashes.
Can I dig in on that?
Yeah, please, sure.
It'd be helpful to know because this is a kind of, imagine a rather unique set of circumstances for a traffic camera on a state highway for shoulder. I'd be curious if you could get back to us. It does not need to be in this budget process, but over the interim, other state police, if you've deployed similar speed mitigation issues, or not you, but other agencies, I think it's a interesting concept. I just want to make sure others have done it and worked through the kinks before we consider traffic monitoring cameras and issuing citations on state highways before.
That's fine. You caused trouble, Senator Salling.
Senator Jackson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Carl, as you know, and much of your staff knows, over the years, we've engaged in partnerships, and I'll just use one of the three counties I represent, Prince George's, in the southern portion of Prince George's County. Those are numbered highways, which are state highways, with state roads, not necessarily highways. And the deployment efforts by sheriff's offices and county police on the Prince George's County side have been futile, and with the staffing shortage with your agency, the same. And we have tried to do legislation. We actually had a piece of legislation that actually passed the General Assembly. Where we thought on Croom Road and some other roads that we could put those cameras up, and we had some challenges locally with the county folks. So let's stay connected on that point, because I think when you talk about speeders on our highways, there are speeders that come from the southern counties trying to get to where they need to get, and there are no shoulders on those roads, by the way. So stay connected on that one.
Yes, Senator, understanding the area you speak about, Croom Road, there was always the one camera right there at the school that was closed. And people start to understand that. I mean, it's helpful if we have the ability, legislation, to move those cameras around, because obviously you see a downtrend once people know where that camera is.
First question is, what percentage of your staff is civilian? Ballpark.
Off the top of my head,
we've got 858 civilian and 1,569.
So it's about a third.
Pins. Right.
Oh, I'm saying that's total pins.
Total pins.
So it's half and half.
No.
No,
it's
1/3 civilian,
correct, about a
2/3
third.
sworn officers.
Yes.
Gotcha. Okay, that's all. Do any of the positions in your department require a college degree?
Require a college degree? I think you get to that when you start to talking about critical components like the crime lab, things like that. But I'd like to say we offer a gateway for people that have high school degrees or high school diplomas.
No, that's what I'm asking.
GEDs, things
So,
like that.
I mean, so you have a few that require college degrees?
We have a few, but that's typically highly specialized
Very few.
training.
Gotcha. That's what I figured.
Things in the lab that are analytical in nature.
Gotcha. No, that makes sense. I gotta say, I was very impressed with your response and the attachment on recruitment. It's the most sophisticated piece of paper I've seen from any agency before this subcommittee during this session, in terms of thinking hard about it. What I didn't quite understand was, what's the difference between how you have done civilian recruitment before and how you've done sworn officer recruitment before, and how you're looking at doing it going forward? Kind of big picture.
When you look at the big picture, you go back, and I hate to date myself, you go back 25, 30 years, you really didn't have to advertise. Your advertisement was that uniform individual out there. I think at one point we realized as we started to go down this road, approximately 70% of our workforce was recruited through a trooper. Now we've moved into the technology field. We understand that social media technology is our friend, whether it means setting up geofencing at events like graduations, things like that, where people would get it to pop up on their phone.
Yep.
Is one of the biggest things. You have a lot of people that never realized what we do.
Right.
You know, you think about the state police, oh, you only write tickets. Now we have 23 installations spread across the state. Each is somewhat unique, and compounded with that, we have a civilian workforce that does a lot. Everything from CRD to, we have civilians in automotive safety enforcement. We have civilian inspectors in commercial vehicle enforcement, as well as the civilian workforce in HRD.
Gotcha. So the paper talked about how you have these civilian recruiters who are focused on, do you have an equivalent team of sworn officer recruiters?
We have an equivalent team of sworn recruiters. We have the main recruiting unit that works out of headquarters, and they try to touch as many people as possible. And then we have barrack recruiters to try to follow up and set up relationships within communities and bring people in.
Gotcha. Do you work with other police agencies in a formal way on recruitment? Because to some extent, I mean, you do different things than county police departments, state police, but you do some similar things, and the training programs are integrated to some extent. Is there integrated recruitment to try to expand the pool as opposed to just pull from each other?
Sir, with 100% candor, no. I do not believe we do. I am all for anybody that sees themselves in a career in public safety. I think every person sitting in this room knows somebody that would make a good guardian of their community, but we need to stop and think about it. Have we ever told them that? When we start to look at that, we're all competing for the same group of people. You talk about getting down in the area, you know, the Prince George's County area, you have Montgomery County Police, Prince George's County Police, Sheriff's Office for both those counties. Right across the bridge, you have Arlington County Police, Fairfax County Police. You can imagine how competitive that field is. You start to talk about salaries, working conditions, work schedules, benefits packages.
Well, Senator Jackson and I have been working with Prince George's Police and the Prince George Police Association. And would like to work with you. I'll speak for Senator Jackson here as well, if I may. To try to get, at least in Prince George's County, we have so many police forces, just as you say, we need to expand the pool for everybody. And so I'd like to talk to you offline about some cooperative efforts that we're talking about in Prince George.
Yes, sir. I look forward to that conversation.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Senator, actually, when we met yesterday, the Colonel and I suggested he prepare an answer to your question about college degrees versus high school diplomas. So I cheated a little bit.
Do you want that question, that response?
Well, if you could, on the sworn officer side, because I think you do have a good program that I'd like for the record and the subcommittee to hear, if you wouldn't mind spending a moment on that.
When you start to talk about sworn officer recruitment, we're trying to reach people younger and younger, explore a program, have them transition into cadets. When you start talking to people at community fairs, they really don't realize as a cadet, you're starting your career towards retiring in law enforcement. You're contributing to a retirement fund. You will see people that can retire at relatively young ages, 40, 45, things like that, somewhere depending upon when they came on. We have moved to a 25-year retirement. So starting at 18, you can imagine what that advantage is. As far as those with degrees are great people. But when you start to talk about diversity within police departments, don't think about just cultural diversity. Think about intellectual diversity. It's great to have a college graduate there. In a perfect world, that college graduate can pass that knowledge on to other people that may not have been fortunate enough to have that advantage. One of the things we do offer, you come to our academy, you finish in the upper third of the class, you do go through the Frederick County Community College program. You graduate with an associate's degree. That associate's degree unlocks the University of Maryland system. That being said, we may have a person that's worked 2 or 3 jobs, maybe up late at night stocking shelves at supermarkets. I can tell you, if you bring us an individual with resilience and fortitude, we can get them through the academy. We can get them through that AA program. The world is their oyster at that point. Do they want a BS? Do they want a master's degree? Do they want to go to law school?
Thank you.
Educational bonuses for those.
Oh, yes. I'm sorry. I left that out. We do offer educational bonuses and increments all the way up to doctorate.
Thank you. Thank you very much. We spoke about this yesterday as well, but everybody in front of the subcommittee, I'm asking them to give us their own, set your own goal, your own adventure for where you'd like us to hold you in terms of your vacancy rate when we meet again next year.
To be realistic, and I apologize to those seated behind me, we're going to push for a goal of 8% sworn and maybe 10% civilian.
Perfect, thank you. Can you speak, Colonel, a little bit to the status of the gun center, since that was legislation from last year? I appreciate that you're a week on the job, and it's a bit of a curveball, but it's just because this legislature worked hard on that piece of legislation last year, and you've been staffing up for it.
In a minute, I'll bring up Major Stahersky. I'll talk to you about the gun center. One of the biggest problems we had with gun arrests is making sure you pick the appropriate charges and not have to go back and do that. The gun center offers us 24-hour coverage to make sure the charges are correct, the individuals are properly researched. Are they prohibited? Are they not prohibited? And the gun center is not unique to the Maryland State Police. Every department in this state and some departments out of state will call down and ask us. Adam, would you like to go in staffing?
Sure. As far as staffing, good afternoon. Good afternoon. As far as staffing right now, we are working with the positions that we requested last year that hopefully get through this year. 13 civilian employees, 4 sworn, and then 2 for our IT side to help build our database that's currently in procurement process right now. We've currently hired 3 contractuals. 4th is on its way. So we could steadily, as soon as we get these pinned positions, we could directly move them into a pinned position to receive full benefits retirement.
Okay, it was a priority, as you know, of this legislature from last year. So if you could give us regular updates on that, I think we'd appreciate that as the pins come online. And then Colonel, I think my last question is, I want to give you an opportunity to speak on the recent news about the quota systems, and if whatever you'd like to share with the subcommittee, we'd be interested in hearing it.
You know, I prepared remarks, and I have to say that the quota system has no place. The Maryland State Police does not approve of quotas. By policy, troopers are given specific time measurement, performance goals, and objectives that are consistent with the department's goals and objectives. Supervisors and commanders are trained to develop and monitor and evaluate their performance. Citations are but one factor in 15 factors used to evaluate a trooper. Ultimately, that evaluation of trooper is all about professional development and make sure that they become the best guardian that they can be. Any performance statement should identify what task is to be required, how they must do it, and how well they must do it to be properly evaluated. Performance expectations are to be reasonable, attainable, and expressed in terms of quality, quantity, and timeliness. When accusations regarding quotas first became known, the acting bureau chief of field operations immediately tackled that problem, calling in the commanders of all 23 barracks and their supervisors and meeting with them. He provided a direct statement, letting them know that this was unacceptable. He directed a quality assurance review of all barracks and regional performance expectations, provided guidance in reconciling potential findings and discrepancies. I've been a senior leader with this department prior to my retire for almost 8 years. When I retired, I was the chief of field operations bureau. There's clearly been a breakdown in communication in some areas. I can assure you that my team will work to correct these weaknesses. I understand that ultimately the people at the top are responsible. However, somewhere in the middle, that message was muddled. And we have met that head on, and we'll continue to monitor that.
We appreciate that. Any further questions? Yes. Senator Jackson.
Colonel, in your the questions that are asked you earlier to get some information back to me, could you include the dispatchers at the station and barracks as well?
Gladly. Yes, sir.
Cool. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We appreciate you and your team being here. We do have 2 witnesses signed up for the public, and Colonel, I'd ask if your team could stay just to hear that public testimony. Okay.
Yes, Madam Chairman.
All right. So we have Mr. Michael McNulty and Mr. Patrick Moran. Appreciate you all being here. And a reminder, Patrick, you know, but 2.5 minutes. I'm sure it's timed perfectly.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee. My name is Patrick Moran. I'm the president of ASME Council 3. We represent state, county, municipal, and higher education employees across the state of Maryland. Over the last 8 years, we have seen about a 45 to 50% increase in salaries for state troopers, Capitol Police, sworn officers. And while at the civilian side, we've seen less than 3% a year on average. As you've heard, the troopers vacancy rates are in the single digits, while our civilian employees are at anywhere from 15 to 30% vacancy rates, depending on the job classification. We have attempted to address this at the bargaining table with DBM over the past 8 years. We've been rebuffed every time. We understand in the last several years, MSP has not made requests for ASRs for a number of those job classifications, but then outside of collective bargaining, they have made changes, which we appreciate, but that is counter to the process. Under this new administration, we hope that we can reach some understanding as to what needs to be addressed and how to address those. But I would say, as Mr. McNulty will testify to here in a moment, for people's health and safety and people's livelihood, your constituents' livelihood, we would ask that there needs to be some changes, in particular in the job classification that Mr. McNulty is going to discuss here today. So thank you for your time.
Thank you, Patrick. Thank you, Madam Chair. Good afternoon, committee members, Ms. Miller. My name is Michael McNulty, as we've already learned. I'm a civilian pilot for the Maryland State Police Aviation Command and a member of AFSCME Local 3675. I'm a retired military aviator. I've been a pilot, helicopter pilot for 36 years and a pilot with the Maryland State Police, an aircraft commander, pilot in command, captain, if you will, for 6 years. I command a 4-person mixed sworn civilian crew and an $11 million aircraft that serves the people of Maryland who are in distress, whose lives are in danger, who are otherwise in need of rescue. The Aviation Command has a fleet of 10 helicopters flying from 7 sections or bases that are strategically located within Maryland. I fly out of the Salisbury section located in Salisbury, the Trooper 4 section. Full staffing for the Aviation Command is 10 line pilots per section for a total of 70 pilots. The most economical staffing is 9 pilots per section, using overtime to make up the differences, for a total of 63 line pilots. We currently have 48 line pilots. That's 32% below full staffing and 24% below the most economical staffing. To try to keep our 7 sections open 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, it's not uncommon for our pilots to work over 1,000 hours of overtime per year so that we can be there when the call comes. This overtime not only has an economic cost, but there's a cost in terms of family and employee burnout and correspondingly employee retention. At our current staffing levels, we simply cannot afford to have anyone get sick, take vacation, or attend to a family matter without impacting our ability to fill all of our 12-hour shifts. The reality is we're not filling all of our shifts. We routinely close 1 or more of our 7 sections during either a day or night shift or both due to the lack of a pilot, and we depend on overlapping section coverage to fill the voids. The state of Maryland has an internationally envied multi-mission helicopter air medical rescue program. Although we're best known for our thousands of scene trauma medevac missions, we also conduct overland and overwater search and rescue, law enforcement, and aerial hoist missions. We're in fact the first responders for overwater search and rescue in the Chesapeake Bay. We often perform all 3 missions in the same flight, day or night. For example, just last night as the sun was setting, Trooper 5 in Cumberland was dispatched to medevac a severely injured bicyclist in Garrett County. Once the aircraft was on scene, and due to the extended time it would have taken to move the patient over land, the air ground team decided to hoist the victim out of the wooded mountainous terrain, after which they provided life-saving care while flying to the hospital. This is not simply air ambulance flying. It requires highly experienced and well-trained pilots and aircrew. To sustain this service, we must be able to recruit and retain tactically experienced and qualified pilots who can perform our multiple missions. And we must stop burning our pilots and their families out while we're waiting for the cavalry to show up. Our recruiting challenge is the worldwide shortage of airplane pilots to fill the voids in the airlines where retirements and COVID have created shortages. For over 3 years, the airlines have been aggressively recruiting helicopter pilots leaving the military and paying the cost of converting them to airplane pilots at salaries unheard of in the helicopter world. As a result, commercial helicopter operators who also suffer from lack of pilots have significantly increased their hiring bonuses, salaries, locality pays, retention bonuses, retirement incentives, and other stipends. I'm just about there. Thank you. The combined salaries and incentives are often more than 100% above the salary and retirement of an MSP pilot in command. We know that we cannot fully compete with their wage packages. It's true that a part of our compensation is knowing that what we do saves lives. But at the same time, there's been absolutely no attempt to recruit and retain pilots to Maryland with any sort of change in compensation. We've consistently brought the issue to the bargaining table, proposing changes to the special MSP pilot wage scale or through annual salary reviews, only to be ignored. If the Aviation Command is going to fulfill its mission, we need to take the issue of staffing seriously and compete. My coworkers and I love our jobs and the mission of the Aviation Command, but it's broken. And if we're going to serve the people and save lives, we must be given the resources to encourage people to join our mission and to stay with the state. Thank you.
Thank you for all this information. I know how important our aviation is for the state of Maryland and for our people and for their safety and to doing their job right. Do we have a aviation training facility in the state of Maryland?
We do. It's primarily located at Martin State Airport in Middle River.
Okay.
And there's a pretty extensive flight simulating device there as well. We have a cadre of instructors, a lot of professional aviators.
Okay. Well, that's good to know because we've talked about this for a while. My delegate has really been on this for some reason. And we've emphasized how much of importance we need aviators. I mean, in all the realms, you can talk about every one of them, how we need them. So I think it's just something that maybe we can look into if we can continue to talk about this and talk to our leadership, our secretary, maybe we can get some more people, get some people trained. And we could find ways to just get more interest. I think it would
to clarify, sir, though, what the facility there does is train our own. We're bound by the Federal Aviation Administration in who we can bring into the program. They must already be a commercially rated helicopter pilot.
So it would be good if we could go to our veterans and go to them. And
absolutely.
We would definitely be with the Air Assault School. So I kind of know about the Blackhawks and Chinooks and stuff, but it'd be good to get some of those that know that are skilled. So maybe we can go somewhere that way. I appreciate that. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. On that note, Colonel, I suggest that perhaps you meet with our new Secretary of Veterans Affairs and collaborate on some of the opportunities to work with veterans and figure out how to plug in some of these highest vacancy rates.
Yes, ma'am. Sure.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And thank you for your service to our state. Oh, sorry, Senator Rispo.
All right, for Mr. Moran, I think, but either of you. So the civilian employees in the state police are getting the salary adjustments that the other other folks in state government are getting, right? That were put in at the end of last year?
Yes.
Okay.
That we worked out with you mean?
Not with me.
Well, it wasn't with the administration,
No,
that's for sure. We know that. We all know that.
I'm not
I'm
trying
trying to clarify the record here, Senator.
I'm not
It
trying to
it was a work with the General Assembly. It had nothing to do with the administration.
But I wasn't trying to point fingers.
As much as they are trying to take credit for.
Or pat back.
The previous administration. Let me clarify that. Let me clarify that.
Okay, let's start over. So I just want to, so whatever it was that we worked out.
Yes, sir.
These folks are getting.
Yes.
My question is, looking at the continuing vacancy rates and the fact that you all negotiate with the administrator, tried to negotiate with the administration.
Yeah.
So you have proposals from the union. I guess my question is, can you give us some sense from your point of view of what are the 1, 2, 3 major compensation changes that would be needed in the state police with civilian employees to make a major impact on the vacancy rate?
Well, we have to restructure. This isn't just the civilian employees within this state police. It's within every agency. The salary structure has to be restructured. It is antiquated. It's not made for today, it's not competitive by any stretch of the imagination. We're competing with the counties, as you know, the federal government, the cities, whether that's Baltimore City, DC, other states, Delaware, Pennsylvania, and it's just not competitive.
But do you have any sense of scale of that?
Yeah, I mean, it's hundreds of millions of dollars. Yeah. If you want to take this seriously,
I do.
and you want to retain people,
I do.
you're going to have to spend money. I mean, that's
No,
like that and everything. But yeah,
we understand that. I guess, I think it'd be useful for us, and if it's easy to do, just send it to us. If it's not easy to do, think about it, maybe.
what was the, where's the, what was that figure we came up with? Yeah, so just to bring people to the, look, our members, I'm sorry to belabor this, Senator.
I asked the
but-
question.
Yep, okay. Well, I'm just trying to be
Blame me.
respectful of the chair. The reality is if you've been in the state 15 years or more, you are at least 10 steps behind. When you come to the state and you are hired, you are told you're going to start here, and in 5 years, you're going to be here, and in 10 years, you're going to be there. And then the union's going to negotiate COLAs on top of that. Well, this administration ignored that for, at least for the civilian
That
staff.
administration.
Yes, sorry, that administration, the Hogan administration.
understand.
Let me clarify that, not the current
Right,
administration.
right.
Very clear. They ignored that.
Yeah.
And so our members are anywhere from 10 plus steps behind in their salary scale. So it's a falsehood. It's a fallacy that if, when you come to work for the state, you're going to make this first year, that 5 years, that 10 years, that 15 years. It's just not true. And as a result, our folks are behind the rate of inflation, and the state salary scale is uncompetitive.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Senator. Thank you both. Appreciate
Thank
you
you.
being here.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, with that, subcommittee, we are adjourned for today, but don't go too far. Tomorrow we are back here. It's gonna be a rather long Friday. I apologize in advance. We're hearing that budgets for Department of Natural Resources, Maryland Transportation Authority, MDOT Debt Services, State Lottery and Gaming Control Agency, Maryland Energy Administration. And afterwards, we're hearing a briefing on resiliency because that touches about 4 different departments. So we're gonna have a nice discussion about all the budget pieces of that priority. And your snacks. Thank you all very much.